Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a Monday. Welcome to the Monday before Thanksgiving. Welcome to the show. Good morning, everybody. 253-263-1540. 253-263-1540. We've got a lot to talk about. There's Disney news out the wazoo. I think if you're looking at the screen, you can get a sense of where that conversation may go. But there's so much more to dive into. We'll take your calls. 253-263-1540. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the show. I am so excited to take your calls. 253-263-1540. We're live on TikTok. We're live on YouTube. And I am live with you. Good morning, everybody. Mandy, thank you. Welcome to the show. You know, I uploaded the podcast from yesterday when I got home last night from Fantasmic. Generally speaking, the idea is for that podcast with myself and Kenzie to go out, Sunday mornings, maybe a little bit later in the day, Sunday, if something prevents our schedules from lining up. I got locked out. I get home last night. I upload the podcast. All is good. And I decide I'm going to air the Tokyo replay to burn off some of those hours. I told you there's a thing with TikTok. If you hit a certain amount of hours this month as somebody in the creator program that I'm in, you get a TikTok bomber jacket. I can't imagine the quality. But you get a TikTok bomber jacket. So I wanted to burn off some hours. I woke up, and I don't know how the comments were on. I think the comments were on. I don't know. They weren't on when I started the stream. I went to bed. I come downstairs to end it. I think the comments were on. So if you caught the Tokyo replay, I'm not in Tokyo. I've run that thing into the ground at this point, but it's a perfect way to burn off hours. So once I get this bomber jacket, you'll probably never see this Tokyo replay again, unless I put it up on YouTube or TV Remix. So that's the story there, because I got some messages. Did you know you're live? Yes, I know I was live. I hit the button. I'm the only one that has the button. All right. 253-263, good morning, 1540. Let's just get right in to this Muppet conversation, and thank you for contributing to the goal on TikTok, the gift goal on TikTok. That helps with everything, supporting the channel, and we have sponsors now, the whole thing. So thank you for your support over there. But, okay, Friday, the day after I went to IAPA, around, 11 o'clock in the morning-ish maybe, Disney, on their park blog, announces something I knew was coming. Nobody told me. I just knew, and I think many of us did, because their silence on this was deafening. They're replacing Muppet Vision 3D. I'm going to wind up working myself up into a tizzy. I'm just letting you know that right now, because I was up this morning doing some prep on this conversation, about Jim Henson and his legacy, and I'm gonna work myself up, because it enrages me. But as I stated so many times between the announcement and this moment, is that I was numb to it, particularly because I was talking to my buddy while we were walking around IAPA, and I made the comment that I just made to you. Their silence was so loud. I knew it was coming, and it is such a cheap decision to make. And I understand the parks need to change. I understand the park needs to change. I get it. Leave me alone. However, Jim Henson is an American icon and a legacy. So if you are even going to dismantle Muppet Vision 3D, you sure as hell better have a plan for it, okay? Ship it off to the Smithsonian, give it back to the family, Allow it to live somewhere where it can honor the man's legacy. He died before it ever opened. He was working on it when he died. It's the last thing. And the Waldo character was Jim dipping his toe into 3D computer graphics and puppetry because he knew it was coming and he didn't want to be behind the curve. So Waldo was him entering in that world. Okay, and the significance of it being his last project combined with the technical achievements. If you're going to get rid of it, we are having us creative professionals at the Walt Disney Company are having serious discussions about the future of the Muppet Visions. What? You're having serious you should have had the conversations first. This proves my point. The Walt Disney Company not only has, Drek for leadership right now, all right, but they don't actually have a plan. And I see so many people saying, oh, well, listen, the animation courtyard, they have another plan for it. They have another plan for the animation. They don't have a plan for the animation courtyard. I guarantee it. They're not operating with a full deck, okay? They're not. First of all, if you don't want to be cheap about it, what conventional wisdom would tell you, that you expand the brand, you invest in the land, and you create a presence for the Muppets there. But you don't care about the property. You don't even want to own the property. You never knew what to do with the property. The only person who ever wanted to acquire it was Michael Eisner, okay? And that's a whole other torrid love affair, okay? So you have these stepchildren, these redheaded stepchildren called the Muppets that you have no clue what to do with. And your plan was never to put them on Rock and Roller Coaster, but you're trying to solve problems. And I get it because that's what you do. That's your job, solve problems, right? There's no creative decision making. It's all data driven. So conventional wisdom, expand the Muppets. Then you take the animation courtyard and you build Monsters, Inc. out. And then you take Rock and Roller Coaster and you do whatever you want to do with it. Either you retheme it to Monsters, Inc. because let's be honest, retheming it to the Muppets isn't going to work for the kids anyway. So retheming it to Monsters, Inc. ain't going to be a difference. Ain't really making my point with that stellar proper English. So they could have, if they wanted to spend the money, preserved one area and kept another. The idea of uprooting the show and moving it somewhere else on property makes zero sense. Why would you do that? It makes zero sense. If the land is, all you really have to do is bring that shop back, expand the same way they're going to do with Monsters, Inc. land, add a Muppet ride, boom. Now we've got some value in the Muppet IP. Here's the thing. They pay next to nothing for the Muppets, and they don't feel the need to monetize them. Kenzie and I talked about this on the podcast the other day. They paid like less than $80 million for the Muppets, and they paid so much more for everything else. Marvel and Star Wars were $4 billion acquisitions, and they paid less than $100 million for the Muppets. I think it was like 75, 76, 78 million. What's a couple million between friends? They don't know what they're doing. So it's a cheap solve. I would argue that Monsters, Inc. doesn't have much more relevance in the current climate than anything else. I just don't see. Monsters, Inc. is old too. Muppets are older, sure, but all I'm saying is, like, you could have had it both ways if you really wanted to. All right. Now, this is without the conversation of you have all this other land. This is just, decision making. So they don't know what they're doing. They seriously have no plan for the animation courtyard. I promise you, they have no plan for the animation courtyard. When I started streaming these parks 3.5 years ago, I remember talking to cast members over at Star Wars Launch Bay. They have been trying to figure out what to do with that area for the longest time. But there's a building back there for cast members, and I'm sure part of the thing is, even if we're going to spend the money, now we got to displace cast members, so it's not just the cost for construction, but now it's the cost to build a building or to find a place for these displaced cast members and to up. So I'm sure this is all cheap, lazy decision making. Now, that has nothing to do with the Muppets as a brand. That is all just business decision making. And unfortunately, when it comes to the Walt Disney Company, and as you can see, I haven't even gotten started with this conversation, So give me a call and jump in. 253-263-1540. Thank you for contributing to the gift goal. But the problem is it's becoming more and more of a hodgepodge of a park. And I see a comment over on TikTok about the villains thing. I almost call it the villains box because it's basically going to be the villains box. And I will from now on refer to it as the villains box. It wasn't big. It's not big enough for the Muppets. And why would you uproot the Muppets from there to put it over there? It makes no sense. That's not even a lateral move. That's a downgrade. So that makes no sense. You'd be better off keeping what you have. Okay? But the villains box, look, I understand why they're doing the villains box, and it's not my place to explain it to the general public. All right? But the villains box is not about the guests. Okay? So that being back there, okay, with the Muppets over there, even though it was already a hodgepodge with Aerosmith and Cars, it's a further hodgepodge. The Muppets on Rock and Roller Coaster, I give it no more than 8 years. Maybe even 5 with a new CEO. The Muppets on Rock and Roller Coaster, that retheme will be cheaper than the Simpsons retheme of Back to the Future and Universal. And mark my words, they will recycle props for both that and for the Monsters, Inc. attraction. And you're going to get very, very cheap rethemes here. Okay? So a lot of this for me, looking at it from the operational side, makes sense, even though I'm griping about it. Because, hey, we want to do the cheap thing. We want to cut corners. You know, this isn't about creativity. This isn't about the guest experience. We're purely solving problems. And I understand the desire to solve problems. But what they're doing now, particularly with wiping out Muppet Vision 3D, right, is they're putting the final nail in the coffin for the brand that is the Muppets. Because this retheme is going to be Disney's version of the Muppets. They're using the Electric Mayhem, which were never meant to be primary characters. They're going to dumb down the Electric Mayhem to be zany musicians to appeal to children, even though most little kids can't ride that ride, so go figure out that one. That's why it won't last. All right? But it's going to be Disney's version of the Muppets. It's not going to be Jim Henson's. So the real issue I have here, irrespective of what Disney does with their parks, is that you should have had a solution for Muppet Vision 3D first. You should have shown enough care and consideration for the legacy of one man to at least have a plan to preserve that installation, because it's a museum installation at this point, right? It is. But you don't even have any respect. Bob Iger doesn't have any respect for Walt Disney's legacy. Josh D'Amaro doesn't have any respect for Walt Disney's legacy. I can't expect them to have any respect for Jim Henson's legacy. Now, this Monsters, Inc. land is going to be the cheapest retheme you've seen in the history of the Walt Disney Company. It's going to be the cheapest retheme you've seen in the history of the Walt Disney Company. Roscoe Paints is salivating at the mouth because they're going to make so much money, because so much of what's already built is just going to be repainted and served back up to you as something bright and new. And that's fine. That's fine. But the disrespect to the legacy of Jim Henson, to not at least be able to have a plan. I'm not saying you shouldn't get rid of it, because I knew it was coming. In my heart of hearts, I knew it was coming, because the company, they're making some of the worst decisions they've ever made. All right? And at some point, it's really, 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 really going to come down hard on them. The problem is, most people will never boycott Disney, and Disney knows that. So in many ways, I think Disney is sticking it to their most feverish supporters in the hopes that if they lose a few of them, then they won't have to deal with them anymore. I don't really think Disney likes the bloggers and the vloggers. In fact, I'm certain that they don't. It's a double-edged sword. And I think the bloggers and the vloggers generally represent this kind of mindset. Don't touch everything. Everything is sacred. And while I'll say certain things may be sacred, Carousel of Progress, Muppet Vision 3D is sacred in respect to Henson's legacy. I understood that it was going to go. I just knew it. Nobody told me, but I knew it. So I'm numb to the decision. I'm not going to argue, oh my God, it shouldn't go. I'm going to argue, how effing disrespectful do you have to be to the legacy of one man to not have an exit strategy for the attraction? Because you're not going to throw it in a warehouse. But Bob Iger doesn't care about anybody but Bob Iger. Josh D'Amaro doesn't care about anybody but Josh D'Amaro and that poor electrolysis that has to work on his eyebrows. Believe me, I know. I'm one to talk. Talk about a windfall. He walks into, oh my God, that poor woman. Must look like somebody chopped down a forest when they're done with him. Anyway. 253-263-1540. I'm in a glass house on that one, but who cares? I'm angry. Okay? 253-263-1540. I look like caterpillars moved in. But it doesn't matter. I don't like the man, okay? He's phony. And people used to like him because he had a pretty face, and guess what? That's gone. All right, because the stress is showing, the bad decision-making is wearing on him. He's got to go. And if you make him the CEO, you can kiss the Walt Disney Company goodbye. It's over. It's over. The next CEO, okay, the next co-CEOs of the Walt Disney Company need to be Kevin Mayer and Tom Staggs. Staggs and Mayer is the only solution. People that understand the company, people that have added intrinsic value to the company, and actually want to see the company succeed. I am of the mindset that right now, the company is being lightened up for either an acquisition or for large pieces of it to be chopped up and divvied off. Okay? We're going to talk later about what's going on at NBC Universal, Comcast, NBC Universal. I mean, could they add one more company to the name? Because they're spinning off their cable. And I think what you're going to see happen with the Walt Disney Company over time is that they're setting it up for an acquisition from a tech company. And it probably will inevitably be Apple one day. And it probably won't be under Bob Iger's tutelage. Okay? But the next CEO will probably shepherd the Apple acquisition. Because Bob Iger said in his book that if Steve Jobs was alive, they would have merged the companies. Disney's dying to be a tech company. It's the only way to survive right now. Look at their market valuation. They don't even scratch. I talked about this the other day. They don't even scratch the Netflixes and the Amazons and so on. The Apples. They don't even touch them. It's hard to compete. So I think what you have happening is a lot of the land is being kept on property here in Disney World because the land has more value untouched. And unlike Walt Disney, who actually had a vision, nobody running the company, nobody in any leadership position, nobody in any position to make decisions has a vision or the ability to take risk because all they want is their cushy executive level compensation and everything that comes with it. All right? None of them will ever be anything close to Walt Disney because they don't know what risk is. Walt put everything on the line time and time again. Everything. Every time Walt hit success, he took it and he reinvested it into the company. Walt put his house on the line. He put his life on the line for these things, right? He took the risk and it paid off. What happens is you get these executives that come in, okay, maybe through a merger and acquisition like Iger did, with A, no appreciation for the brand, B, no respect for the founder, and C, no desire to listen. Like, that's the thing. Iger even admits in his book that he stopped listening that's why he left the first time. Because by his own words, Iger says in his book, when he I'm getting worked up. Iger says in his book, the first time he chose to leave is because he got to a point in his career as CEO that anything anyone told him he had already heard before. His words. It's in his book. Which, by the way, makes a great shim, okay? Kindling for a fire, last-minute holiday fire. You don't want to run out to the store. It's called Ride of a Lifetime. It burns quick, so maybe you want to pick up 2 copies. Stack them, crisscross. That's my plug for his book, okay? It's actually a decent read, but it's all Bob Iger propaganda. Oh, did you know I wake up at 4:30 in the morning to steam my wife's milk because I'm such a good husband but such a shit CEO? So by his own admission over the years, he has no respect for the founder, no respect for the brand, nothing. But he would have merged with Apple if Steve Jobs was alive. And I think inevitably that will happen. I don't see any other company going after Disney the way Apple will. And if they slim down the Walt Disney Company, now what does that mean? Get rid of some of your media assets. All right. Because some of it you acquired through Fox. You don't even need them. All right. So you're gonna slim down your media assets. You'll probably get rid of most of what comes in on the Disney cable side through consolidation. But the Fox stuff you can just get, you know what I mean? So whether they choose to spin it off or chop it up, they're holding on to ESPN. I think they'll hold on to ABC because I think ABC has some real value for the immediate, even though people don't program for TV the way they used to. But I think you sell off a bunch of the media at some point. All right, and you make the company ripe for acquisition. And I think Bob Iger's plan was to come back and to boost revenues, reduce operating costs, okay, and preserve the company for acquisition. I think that was his only maneuver, was to come back and prep the company for acquisition. And you can see by the decisions being made that everything is designed to appeal to the numbers and not to creativity. So I say all that to say the Henson Company needs to buy back the Muppets because you don't need to own the Muppets. And retheming Rock and Roller Coaster will be the only Muppet presence in any park, and you haven't even started the project, and you're not going to spend boop to do the project. So sell the Muppets back to the Jim Henson Company. You don't need them. You own the Power Rangers at one point. You sold those back. Sell back the Muppets. You have nothing. You have no plan for the Muppets. You haven't done anything of quality with them ever. Sell the Muppets back in conjunction, okay? And it's just perfect timing because the Jim Henson Company is selling the studio lot on La Brea in Hollywood so that they can put the Creature Shop and the company itself under one roof. So maybe this is an opportunity for them to be able to have tours and people experience Muppet Vision 3D somewhere in Los Angeles. Now, mind you, I don't know what they ever did with the stuff that went to L.A. because, they cloned the production at some point. So in theory, they've got two of everything, which means that's a great deal for the Henson family because you got spare parts for the show. Buy back the Muppets. Give Disney $20 million for the Muppets. $20 million for the Muppets. They bought them for like 70-something. All right. $20 million. Disney doesn't know what to do with them. You shouldn't even take a dime, Disney. In good faith, you should just return the assets to the family because you have no respect for Jim Henson's legacy. (253-263-1540). I'm not done talking about Jim Henson. Here's a statement from the family. And contributing to the gift goal on TikTok is really going to show your support for what we're doing here. So help me knock that out. Thank you. Jim Henson's, this is really hard to read. Jim Henson's final project was Muppet Vision 3D, now regarded as a true theme park classic. Innovation was always Jim Henson's North Star, and his trailblazing career led him to a unique challenge, a truly immersive Muppet experience where audiences are part of the happy chaos of the iconic Muppet Show. Originally debuting in 1991, Muppet Vision 3D combined 3D technology with real-world practical effects alongside animatronic and live Muppet characters. The result was a one-of-a-kind Jim Henson experience and an unforgettable capstone to Jim's magnificent career. As we learn of the show's upcoming closure in its current form at Disney's Hollywood Studios, we look forward to Muppet Vision 3D's next act. Now, that is a peacekeeping statement. But if you read the fine print, they read about it in the press. It's not that the Walt Disney Company gave them any sort of heads up. They read about it in the press. So they're making this public statement because you got to kiss the mouse's ring. But the fine print says it all. as we learn of the show's upcoming closure in its current form, meaning nobody came to them. Now, how do I know? I know. The same way that Disney never went to Frank Oz to run the brand for the company is the same way Disney didn't go to the Henson family and give them a heads up here. They're all but telling you they read it in the press. Okay? They buried it, Bree, on a Friday going into the weekend by design. What are your thoughts? Where do you think Muppet Vision 3D should land? 253-263-1540. Where do you think it should land? You know, Kenzie said on the podcast, if you didn't listen to yesterday's podcast, it went out late last night because of technical issues. But if you agree with what she said, the Muppets are a worn out brand. So why use them at all? Now, I love the Muppets, and I think that the reason the Muppets have been worn out is because they've been misutilized. I think that there's a gap between now and sort of whenever Brian Henson stopped doing the voice, okay? Well, Steve Whitmire did it for a while before, but still, there's a gap there where Disney didn't know what to do with the Muppets post-Muppets Tonight, okay, because that was on ABC, all right? And they haven't done anything effectively with them since. They've popped up in the theme parks from time to time. There's been, half-ass attempts at television shows, but nobody really seems to understand the essence of the Muppets. So sell the Muppets back to the family. It doesn't make sense to keep something you don't appreciate. So I'm not going to sit here and argue they shouldn't get rid of it, because in many ways you should get rid of it because you don't deserve to have it. And shame on this leadership for showing such disrespect to creativity. Okay, we use the term genius way too loosely in today's world, but these men were creative geniuses. Jim Henson was a creative genius. You will never see another Jim Henson as long as we live. Walt Disney was a creative genius and a business icon. You will never see another Walt Disney as long as we live. You won't. Bob Iger, you will never be a Walt Disney or a Jim Henson. I understand that you thought you were bigger than you are. I understand that you left the Walt Disney Company because you thought you were going to run for office, but that all came crashing down really, really quick because those doors didn't open up for you. So I know your ego has gotten the best of you. I think we can all see that now. So in your last act of appreciation for legacy, because you really haven't committed many acts of appreciation for legacy, return the Muppets to the Henson family. Don't even charge them. Just give them it. Just give it. Put it all in the flatbed truck. Give it to them. What's the matter with you? And on top of that, and not that this really correlates, he just pulled a whole bunch of stock, Bob Iger. And he had options. So, I mean, he had to exercise them. But look, Bob Iger just pulled out almost $43 million, okay, in Disney stock. He just cashed out. Do you think with that kind of money that anyone's going to be able to tell that man that he's wrong? Do you think he's listening, especially on his second time? I mean, look, think about it from his perspective. First of all, he knows that he'll never be Michael Eisner, okay, because he worked for Michael Eisner and he watched Michael Eisner, okay, and he knows he'll never be him, all right, but he likes to make all these top-down, quote-unquote, creative decisions and flex his prowess because, he's Bob Iger, but he doesn't have any love for the company. He doesn't have any appreciation for legacy. Bob Iger is all about Bob Iger, and it's sad to me that when he came back with this Messiah mentality, okay? So it is only doubling down on this idea that you can't tell him anything. So nobody's going to appeal to him He's surrounded by yes men, and he's making more money than he should be. Quite frankly, I don't think I understand the idea if you're a founder that you should participate in the success of what you built. Jeff Bezos absolutely deserves everything that he has built. He built it from scratch, and most of us were around for day one to see it. So Jeff Bezos deserves it. But somebody like a Bob Iger, who's just raking in the money, okay, because he got lucky enough to get the job, if, at a certain point, I'm sorry, you should be maxed out. You shouldn't be allowed to make that much money. He's got a board of yes men. He's got a C-suite of yes men. So nobody's going to go up to him and go, this is not the right move, or at least let's think about this. Let's have a better, PR plan for this. No, they don't care. They don't care. And I think in many ways, thinking back, and this might be controversial to say, but I started thinking about this. And I guess I brought this up to Kenzie yesterday on the podcast, but I think that they were the ones behind the Close Splash Mountain campaign. I'm of the mindset that the Walt Disney Company orchestrated the campaign to shut down Splash Mountain. There's been some things that have been brought to my attention quietly that make it kind of click to me that the ride was always going to be rethemed, and Disney, and now, by the way, this would not be the first time in the history of media and entertainment that a company has run their own shadow campaign to get the results they want. But looking back, I think that Disney ran that. I think because they got millions of signatures. They got huge press. And if you read the article about how Bob Iger was undermining Bob Chapek the entire time that Chapek was there as CEO, it's all part of the same playbook. So, and lately, some things were brought to my attention that solidify that. So I'm of the mindset that Disney actually ran that campaign. Where are the millions of signatures for Muppet Vision? I would say where are the millions of signatures for Rivers of America? But it almost feels like all the outrage is for Muppet Vision. But where are the signatures? There's no signatures for that to save it. The signatures for Splash were to get rid of it. And I think Disney knew if they just said they were going to retheme it, that they would get the kind of blowback that they've experienced as of late. So they figured, let's start a viral campaign and make it look like we're capitulating to public pressure and giving the public what they want. And then that makes us look like the good people. Controversial thought, controversial take. But the more and more I'm learning, the more and more I believe it. 253-263-1540. 253-263-1540. I'm not sure what you're talking about in respect to press on ABC. So I think it's this next chapter of the Walt Disney Company. It is the recycle and repurpose phase. And I don't think we should stop fighting on Rivers, but I don't think that they're going to listen. I think they may come to the conclusion, like I've said, to truncate the river. But when you see what they're doing with Muppet Vision and a lack of respect for one man's legacy, how can you expect them to see anything through that lens of appreciation? I think it's quite obvious that leadership at the moment has no understanding or appreciation for the brand that they operate and the characters that they shepherd. I don't see any love there. I know it's a Monday morning. Everybody's getting their day started. I want to talk to you. We're live on YouTube. We're live on TikTok. Thank you for contributing to the goal on TikTok. I'm trying to get to a point where we can knock those out every show. We'll do a team lift at the end of the radio show on TikTok. These mechanisms are, in conjunction with sponsors, are going to allow us to grow this into the next thing, okay? And it's important to me that we do that. I'm getting so tired of the Disney ecosystem. I love Disney. It's in my blood. So I love Disney. I'm not getting tired of Disney, but I'm getting tired of the ecosystem. What do I mean by that? There is a certain type of person that eats and breathes Disney all day long. And anything that is overconsumed can become toxic. And I'm always, look, much like I get information about the stuff we were just talking about, I'm always getting information. And things are always brought to my attention. And when it's brought to my attention, that there are people out there that are so, I mean, I know people are filled with hate, but are so filled with hate and so focused on hating. Okay. And you're like, wow, this is so common in this community. After 3.5 years, I could rattle off a name after name of individual. Okay. And these are people who are supposed to be, active community members in their own right. These are government workers. These are teachers. Acting like children. And I think in many ways, that type of toxic individual, the type of person that overconsumes, I think Disney doesn't care if they lose them. Much like I don't care if I lose them as a viewer, and the reason they hate is because I did kick them out as a viewer, so now they love so much that they hate. You all know the fine line exists between love and hate. But I think Disney looks at this whole ecosystem that's been sort of gestating post-pandemic, and I think they think it's vile. I think there's some real positive folks. I think that if you look at where the good is, it is there and it's genuine. But I think Disney as a whole understands the toxicity and is actually systematically trying to chip away at it. Raising ticket prices for after-hour events, making the locals pay more and more and more for less and less and less in a way that they never used to do. All right? Because those locals, and generally speaking, are those creators, And I think Disney looks at it I think Disney looks at it this way. It's two sides of the coin. One side is, this is fantastic. The first night at Jollywood Studios, we get a whole bunch of creators out there and vloggers and blah, 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 to spend hundreds of dollars on a ticket. They're paying us to market for us. But as they start to tear away at all these things in the parks, the loudest people are the ones with Disney in their name. Like, how many accounts am I seeing that are completely, disgruntled over these decisions? Not just Muppets, but that's the latest outrage, right? So it's like, wow, all of these bloggers and content creators that Disney has relied on for years, it's almost like they're purposely now trying to shed them by making decisions that will upset them. Because I don't think Disney would, look, they've gotten rid of certain people for doing certain things. But generally speaking, there's no such thing as bad press. So unless Disney is forced to react accordingly, then they're not really going to, excise people. However, the quote-unquote Disney adult is a toxic idea. And I think Disney is trying to literally get rid of that. And I think these decisions are based on, we can stick it to the Disney adult. We don't want them. We want the next generation. And while I don't agree with maybe their approach to bringing in that next generation, they're leveraging the Pixar side of the business. And I think when you look at Cars and you look at Monsters, they're so broad in their appeal, all right, that maybe Disney's got the data figured out for them where there might be a short-term loss, but overall they see a net positive by getting rid of a certain type of toxic consumer. So I kind of feel like that factors into the equation, just knowing what I know and the people that I've had to deal with and the rumblings that I still hear. Disney will take anybody's money, but they don't need to. And I think that this whole thing, as I've said for months on end now, the whole live streaming of the parks will max out at some point. That they will ban. It'll just be a matter of time. But I actually think all of these decisions, in conjunction with the idea to hack up the company and sell it off or merge it, I think they're trying to actually get rid of the toxic Disney adult. I really believe that. Because look how many people people that I have been aware of before I ever started streaming the parks that have been around forever, who normally might be considered a shill, are outraged over these decisions. Like, they're losing their most feverish independent marketers. Will they still show up and pay? Maybe. Will Epic be the thing that draws them away? Will some of these guys actually go from being a Walt Disney World whatever to a Universal? Probably not. But I definitely think Disney's of the mindset, listen, if they stick around, we gouge them. And if they leave, c'est la vie. 253-263-1540. It's gotten very, very toxic. I don't understand why people like Pizza Rizzo so much. Can somebody call in and explain to me what the fascination is with Pizza Rizzo? I don't get it. I'll never understand it. Never saw the appeal. Never. I don't get it. I really don't. Now, Rizzo as a Muppet is an interesting character. Rizzo has had several voices over the years, if you go look at the history of Rizzo and how the Rizzo character has developed. But I'll never understand the love for Pizza Rizzo. I'm not knocking it. I just don't understand it. I got to stay on the Muppets for a minute, folks. Because the reason I think Muppet Vision 3D truly belongs in the Smithsonian is, first of all, if you don't know, Jim Henson really started in local TV, right? Where was he? Maryland? And so not only in many ways is he a local icon, but the way that Jim Henson, like, decade by decade, tackled the mediums, and the way that he used the Muppets to just create record after record in medium after medium. Jim Henson did things that nobody else has ever done. And I just feel like, again, if you're going to get rid of Muppet Vision 3D, you should have had a plan. I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, my God, they're getting rid of it, because I just felt it. I felt it. Okay? And it's a real bummer. But that area's been sitting there dead forever. And if they really wanted to do something with the Muppets, they would have done it a long time ago. But you have no respect for the Muppets, and you have no respect for Jim Henson's legacy. So I'm of the mindset you need to get rid of them. And I'm of the mindset that you should have at least had been able to pair this announcement with the exit strategy for the show. So a little history on Jim Henson. Jim Henson, at the age of 17 years old, enters the local television market, working on a morning show doing puppetry. 17 years old, 1954. It would be 9 years of working through commercials and Sam and Friends and developing Kermit the Frog by using an old raincoat. Okay? It would be 9 years before what would become Muppets Inc. would move to New York. Okay? And at this point, he had gotten this far with the help of his wife, Jane. Jane was an integral part of developing the Muppets. Okay? But by the time, it took 9 years, almost a decade. You got to think about how long that is, okay? And to not give up, all right? So this is no Muppet Show, no Sesame Street, nothing. 1963, Muppets Inc. moves to New York. Jane starts to raise the kids. So she leaves. Frank Oz enters. So it takes 9 years, almost a decade, before Jim Henson meets his other half in Frank Oz, who would really be the added spark to launch everything we know and love about the Muppets. Jane was a foundational inspiration and a huge part of the development of the Muppets. But it wasn't until Frank enters that everything just goes off the rails in the most Muppet of ways. I say off the rails, full tongue in cheek. All right? So now Frank Oz enters, and it would be another 6 years before they get Sesame Street. Okay? And they're brought into Sesame Street, okay? So they landed that opportunity. So you're talking about a 17-year-old kid in 1954 would ride a 15-year cycle of what would have been inevitably ups and downs, failures and successes, lots of rejection inevitably, to getting to the point of Sesame Street. That's just Sesame Street. Then the 70s come around, all right? That's how those years work. The 70s come, and they decide they got to go beyond kids. And the 70s would become formative years for the Muppet brand as a whole. This is when Jim and Frank would go to Lorne Michaels, and they would work with SNL, and the Muppets would lean into doing more adult humor. But Jim Henson's words, things never really gelled between them. So they left. All right? Now, we go to 1976. The only person who would actually finance a show based on the Muppets was a gentleman in the UK. At the time, Jim Henson was also trying to develop a Broadway show for the Muppets. This opportunity sees him uprooting the entire company and moving to London to produce The Muppet Show. The Muppet Show goes gangbusters and redefines everything. Culturally, from a business perspective for the company, personally for Jim, because he wasn't without his transgressions. It's a story for another time. Three years after The Muppet Show was so successful. So now we're talking about, a 17-year-old kid in 1954. It takes him all the way till 1976. That is 22 years. 22 years of chasing a dream, of running around. Kermit wasn't there in the beginning, but ultimately most of those years did see Kermit running around with that frog, trying to figure it all out and never giving up. That is the American dream. He has to go to the UK to achieve the American dream. 22 years. The success of The Muppet Show is so massive that only 3 years later he is able to create the Muppet movie. And the Muppets now have conquered television and feature films. There's no such thing as an overnight success. Everything is marketed that way. There's no such thing as an overnight success. That's a 3-year jump. I was obsessed with Jim Henson as a kid, if you can't tell, okay? Somebody please drop the number in the chat on TikTok, and thank you for contributing to the gift goal. I appreciate that. So 1979, the Muppet movie comes out. It's only a few years later, in 1982, that Jim Henson releases The Dark Crystal. The concept developed on a cocktail napkin in a hotel room with his kid during a storm. I believe there was a flight delay. And he develops The Dark Crystal. If you know anything about The Dark Crystal, you've got the Skeksis, the Gelfling. Spoiler alert, they're a little more related than you may think. Okay. So, 1982 is Dark Crystal. The end of the 80s, 1989, Jim Henson begins his negotiation with the Walt Disney Company. Michael Eisner is the CEO. The negotiations are not finalized, but vis-a-vis a handshake deal, the development of Muppet Vision 3D begins. Production on Muppet Vision 3D was filmed in Walt Disney World, January 1990, about a year after the negotiations begin. So there's enough good faith there that they begin working on this project. But Disney doesn't own the Muppets yet. And my understanding is Eisner starts putting the characters in the park and advertising that the Muppets are coming to Disney World before there's even ink on paper. This is the beginning of a torrid love affair with the brand. May. So we have January, production begins on Muppet Vision 3D. May, Jim Henson dies. Production has not even completed and Jim Henson dies. Now, somewhere in the middle there, my parents took me to MGM and Jim Henson was there and it was the Backlot Express and I could go on live and walk you through a live recreation of that moment because it lives in my brain, etched in fine detail and HD of seeing Jim Henson walk in there. So I was there somewhere in those few months before he passed. I remember it. I got the photos in LA. I got to show you the photos at some point. But it means so much to me because Jim Henson was such an influence on me. And at this point now, Jim Henson leaves us. And what he leaves behind is the beginning of this project. And this project, Muppet Vision 3D, like I said earlier, was meant to sort of spearhead the company's move into 3D animation and computer graphics. And if you watch the Jim Henson Storyteller stuff, the Storyteller series, then you'll get a lot more insight to this stuff. Jim Henson passes away. And what happens next is interesting because the deal doesn't go through. Despite Muppet Vision 3D opening up and being successful, ultimately, Henson sells the Muppets to a company by the name of EMTV, a German company. And EMTV decides that they're going to use Kermit and Piggy to sell Mercedes-Benz to kids. So the Muppets are leaving their world of zany, wacky adventures, and they're going to go back to the world of advertising. In many ways, it's full circle, and they're going to become fixtures for Mercedes. EMTV, I believe it was now I'm not looking at my notes because this is all in my head and my heart. $680 million acquisition, I believe, at the time, because I was interning for the Muppets at this moment. So I lived there. I mean, I was there. I lived it. And $680 million acquisition. EMTV, a German company, buys the Muppets. Disney loses them. They never had them. They have the show, but they don't have the Muppets. The $680 million acquisition ultimately has to be reversed because that company cooked the books, and I believe the Jim Henson Company buys the Muppets back for like $68 million. Now, I don't know if they got to keep the $680. I don't know what happens with the movement of money in that whole debacle, but ultimately they get them back. And then a sale to Disney is done again for, again, under $80 million. And if I'm remembering off the top of my head, according to what Kenzie told me, that would have been about 2004, which makes sense because I was an intern there in college in 2002 when EMTV took over and then Muppets got them back. Because I remember walking into the Muppet Mansion and turning to the woman who ran publishing and say, who bought us? Because it was a whole debacle at the time. There was a lot of drama. And she said, we did. In 2004, Less than $80 million. Only a few years later, Disney makes essentially back-to-back $4 billion acquisitions of Marvel and Star Wars. Not quite back-to-back, a few years in between. But at that price tag, I think it's fair to call them back-to-back, because who spends $4 billion back-to-back? So this little $80 million investment in the Muppets gets completely dwarfed, no pun intended, by two $4 billion acquisitions. The 17-year-old Jim Henson from 1954's legacy would only exist in Muppet Vision 3D. It had a short stint in California Adventure, but that was Disney on their own doing it, to my knowledge. But that last remaining beacon of a man's legacy, of one man's American dream, was Muppet Vision 3D. And it's being completely eradicated. And yes, I've now talked about Muppet Vision 3D for an hour. Okay? But the fact that you didn't show any deference to the American dream, okay, bothers me so much, because your founder was so passionate about the American dream. And it riles me up so much, because I lost everything during the pandemic. I lost everything. And going to the park saved me. Going to the park saved my life. I remember being on the phone with an attorney over this multi-million-dollar lawsuit, if you know my story. Looking at the water at the boardwalk, knowing that there's probably gators in there, and literally thinking to myself, I'm never going to get out of this lawsuit. I should just jump in this water and just that'll be over. Going to the park every day and getting to share my love of the park and getting to escape saves me. It's hard to explain it, but I grew up on Walt Disney and Jim Henson, so being able to escape being able to escape in my lowest of times and be surrounded by characters and stories that nurtured me, that was all I had. That is what Disney means to me. That is what the legacy of Jim Henson and Walt Disney means to me. Because those characters, they raised me. They inspired me. Anything I ever did in life was because I was inspired by Jim Henson and Walt Disney. And eventually Lucas and Spielberg. But everything I ever did in life was inspired by these guys. I never thought growing up that I always thought I lived in the wrong era. I thought I missed everything. I thought I missed all of the advent of technology. I thought I missed everything. And it turns out that I was in the right moment, because the internet boom was the biggest advent of technology ever. And I never thought I'd have a garage business, And I learned about that from Walt Disney. I learned about these things from these guys. And if you've never lived the American dream, then you don't understand how much it means to have nothing, to be at your lowest. I've done it twice. When I started the business in my garage, I had nothing. I had lost everything. Not to the extent that I did with the pandemic. Okay? But this garage business, this thing that I never thought I'd have, I thought it was the coolest thing ever, the American dream, a business in a garage. And I built it from scratch. And it became hugely successful. And it was only till the pandemic that it got crushed. Okay? And then the very thing that would save me would be Disney. The very thing that would actually come to my rescue was the thing that inspired my entire childhood, my entire life. So it's a tough one for me to talk about because everything that lit a fire in my creative soul sits under the brand Disney. Star Wars, the Muppets, Mickey. It all sits there under this one company, and I just can't stand the way they're operating. And, it's funny when people go, oh, you don't like Disney, or you're fake, or why aren't you in the park anymore, and this, that, and the other. Like, it's not just the trend for me. This thing means so much to me. And this streaming the parks thing meant so much to me when I needed it the most. Now I struggle because I'm like, what are you people doing? Maybe the next leadership, next round of leadership will come in and revitalize things. That's typically how it goes. One can only hope. But it's like watching. It's tough because it's like watching your. It's like watching your friends being taken away from you. And I know that sounds like, now I sound like a Disney adult. But if you understand what I'm saying, like, shit got me through tough times. And I'm sitting there this morning reading up on Jim Henson's story, and I'm getting all choked up because, the guy, how many opportunities did the guy have to give up? And he didn't give up. And if you're a true entrepreneur, you understand it because how many times do I want to give up? So it's so personal for me because these are my idols. And I've never talked about this stuff like this with anyone before in 3.5 years of doing this. But these are my idols. And Jim Henson, I can't even, I've been doing the Rainbow Connection thing since I was like 12 or 13 years old. Theater arts camp, Kermit, whole camp there. Watching, standing over, like it's just, Kermit he's a part of me, and it's hard to explain to people. So I just wish there was more respect and appreciation, and I wish that we took the opportunity, even in a corporate environment, to teach the American dream. And I don't understand why it's becoming so taboo to talk about the American dream. And Jim Henson is the epitome of the American dream as much as Walt Disney. And I just find it hugely disgraceful. And Bob Iger is not the American dream. Bob Iger is not the American dream. Bob Iger is the definition of failing upwards. Okay? Well, I told you I'd work myself up into something. 253-263-1540. 253-263-1540. It just means more to me than I can explain, and I have zero interest in supporting and feeding a company that I think is so misguided. And as much as the company was there for me, and I will always be there in some form for the company, not that they need me, but you know what I'm trying to say. But like, I just find myself in this particular phase to just be so over it and so defeated by it and so disinterested in being there, honestly, because like, I'll just go, I just would just go up and just start like finding managers in the park, but they can't do anything. And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't like the idea of being there a lot and feeling helpless to what's going on. And I respect change, and change is good, but not bad change. Bad change is bad change. And good change is good change. So don't argue with me about that. I don't have time for it. 253-263-1540. I got to move on. The live action Moana looks like crap. That's my bold statement. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. Sorry, kids. But I saw a picture of The Rock with what looks like a 3D printed chest plate for Moana. I mean, he looks like a He-Man character. Looks like something from Play School. I hope that that's being like, somehow that's just a temporary thing and, they'll do CGI or something. Not that I think that's going to solve any real problems, but boy, does that look like Drek. By the way, one of the issues I have is now everybody's a filmmaker. All these comments on Twitter about the color grading on Wicked, like everybody's a colorist now. Like, people know too much, or at least they have too much information, so they think they know things. You get a photo leaked out, and then you got every filmmaker comes out of their mom's basement to comment. But so all that to say that maybe that is just a temporary plate and there will be effects used. I would have but just from the photo I saw, why do we need this? Why? We're just going to run Moana into the ground. Why? I don't get it. Why do we need more Moana? Wicked was beautiful. Now, Disney is embracing sports more than ever before. Not only is ESPN launching their own OTT, which is an app, basically, and it's going to have gambling and such, but they are actually going to do something called Disney Dunk the Halls. Spurs Knicks live on Christmas Day on ESPN 2, ESPN Plus, and Disney Plus. This will be the first real-time animated NBA game that will feature Mickey, Minnie, and friends playing on Main Street at the Magic Kingdom. So I guess through some sort of motion capture type technology or whatever they're going to utilize, and I think we saw this with SpongeBob at the Super Bowl, but they're basically going to have the game's going to be mirrored in live animation on Main Street of the characters playing. It's kind of a fun way to bring in new viewers, right? I don't know. I don't know what the business side of that looks like. I'm thinking like, oh, okay, so where do you take this? Is this really viable, or is this just a stunt to drive viewership? It's probably just a stunt. I don't know if people really need to see that all the time. And I don't know if anyone's going to watch the whole game that way, but it might be a novelty for kids, right? And we do live in a second screen world, so it's not a foreign idea that the game would be up in front of you and then you'd have a second screen watching that, right? I was going to talk a little bit about IAPA. I'm just checking to see where we're at time-wise because I do need to do an ad break. Let's actually just do the ad break right now. It's supposed to be a mid-roll break, but just to be able to chop up the conversation. And again, write down the phone number and please throw it in the chat, 253-263-1540. And helping knock out that gift goal on TikTok is going to show your support for what we're doing here. 253-263-1540. Ready to spice up your kitchen this holiday season? Pampered Chef has all the goodies from spatulas and mandolins to amazing pots and pans and knives. Plus, don't miss out on small appliances like the deluxe air fryer and coffee maker to make your holiday cooking a breeze. Reach out to Colleen Herman, pamperedchef.com/PWS/Colleen Herman. pamperedchef.com/PWS/Colleen Herman. On vacation and the unthinkable happens. Have you been injured in an accident? Don't wait. Get the help you deserve when you need it the most. At the law offices of Nicole M. Kennedy, they fight for your rights and work tirelessly to get you the compensation you deserve. They're there to guide you every step of the way. Call now, 305-213-5438 for a free consultation. 305-213-5438 for a free consultation. You don't pay unless they win, so you can focus on healing. Let them handle the rest. 305-213-5438. And if you need last-minute shopping from the parks, go visit my friends at the UPS store. located at 6526 Old Brick Road. Tell them Joe Coconut sent you. If you have a last-minute lightsaber acquisition and you don't want to take it on the airplane, they'll help you get it packed up. They may even go pick it up for you from the park. So hit them up. They also have a notary if you're local. And I like them. They're good people. So check them out. We've got William.Bailey Travel for all your travel needs, cruises, theme parks, etc. William.Bailey at academytravel.com. William.Bailey at academytravel.com. You can also use the form on my website. William will customize your travel experience for you at competitive rates. So reach out to him. Lots of folks in the community have used William. He's fantastic. And sometimes we are so worried about this life in this moment, we forget to plan for the life we leave those behind. With no estate plan, you could be leaving those you love the most with high taxes, probate fees, and an incomplete or divided estate, and legal fights and fees. A will or trust is not just for the Rockefellers anymore. If you live in Florida, contact RK Law to make an appointment and safeguard the future for those you love. RK Law here in Florida. Send an email to Russell at rklawpro.com. Send an email to Russell at rklawpro.com. Thank you to our sponsors. Love having those sponsors. Nice way to break it up as we shift conversations. We were talking about the Muppets and Disney, and did not expect to get choked up, but I knew I'd get worked up. I didn't think I'd get choked up, but it's tough. All good things must come to an end, but it's tough, and it's really tough when it's something you deeply care about. And I can shut out all the noise. Okay, I can shut out all the noise. But just knowing how I feel and how much it means to me personally, I struggle with giving the company too much money. I have my AP. That's cool. I struggle with giving the company too much money. I don't want to give them much of my money. And I wish people had the gall, maybe that's not the right word, the chutzpah, to boycott. But they won't. Nobody will do it. Everybody's too afraid. Nobody will do it. One day, boycott Disney. One day, nobody shows up to the parks. Now, that's an almost impossible thing to accomplish. But they know, like, what do you do? So for me personally, like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, I'm not happy with the way that they're running the company, and I'm not happy with the business decisions, and then go spend money on tickets for the Christmas party that hasn't changed in 4 years, 3 years. Just not going to do it. But I want to get off Disney for a second and shift completely into a different world. I want to talk about crypto for a second. I don't know who here has crypto, and if you do, call in, talk to me about it. I am by no means an expert on crypto. Nick has been dabbling in crypto far longer than I have. But I purchased crypto recently, so I'm a little more tuned into it. And last week, and I'll explain, I'll break down what crypto is in basic terms in a moment. But last week, this 12 or 13-year-old kid was like live on TikTok, and he launched crypto. To the moon. He launched crypto, his own crypto, and he did a pump and dump, and he made like 30 grand. I think it was like 2 different transactions, 2 different coins, but let's just simplify the story. Basically, he did a pump and dump scheme, created his own crypto coin, was live on, I believe, TikTok, pulled $30,000 down, tanked it on everybody, cut the live. Okay. They got so upset, they ran it up to millions of dollars. It's like the Wild West. I made the comment earlier about I always wanted to live in a time where like technology was evolving and things were changing rapidly. I don't know if there's any era that is more wild than the internet era as far as the evolution of media. I mean, the idea that a kid creates a crypto coin and he's sitting in front of the computer live and does a pump and dump. Number one, I was going to say, how is that not insider trading? It's not trading. It's currency. It's not stock. But I mean, like these are unregulated areas. At some point, they'll have to be regulated because that's nuts. So then on top of that, then they go after the kid's mom on Instagram. Then I think somebody kidnapped the kid's dog. I mean, it's just nuts. People are nuts. But the kid, he made a crypto coin, $30K in a pump and dump. Sat there. He actually made a couple coins. So I don't know how much money he actually made. But if you don't understand what crypto is, think of it like trading currency like stock. Okay? The difference between USD and the yen is the currency converter, or the currency conversion. The currency conversion is based off of the value of the dollar, the value of the yen, right? So these things fluctuate, but not drastically. All right? So with crypto, think of it like a currency, but instead of it's tied to a country, it's tied to nothing. Literally tied to nothing. And instead of being driven by, the rate of the currency as pertaining to the economy, this can be driven by anything, like a meme or a volatile reaction to some kid doing a pump and dump. That's it. Crypto is basically digital currency tied to a whim. That's the simplest way I can explain it. And Bitcoin, which is the original one, is about to break $100,000 a coin. And if you want to understand what that means that means that one Bitcoin being worth $100,000, think of it like the USD and think of it like a yen, right? Like think of the conversion rate. So now it would cost me 100,000 US to buy one coin of Bitcoin. In the early days, it cost like nothing. So it's just gone through the roof. So there are these other coins like Ethereum and such, other currencies, that exist and people trade them and they are volatile. But the idea that a kid created one and just within a matter of moments, made this kind of money, pumped and dumped it, and then the reaction drove it up to a multi-million dollar market cap. I don't remember what the actual market cap was. And then it tanked like 2 days later, but a whole bunch of people rode up, made money. I mean, it's wild. I'm sure a whole bunch of people lost money too. But it's a 13-year-old kid in his bedroom creating cryptocurrency. If you don't understand it, now's the time to start to understand it because there's opportunities out there. So needless to say, I've gone from having zero crypto to having a very, 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 very small understanding of it. And having Dogecoin because I just think it's getting marketed every day by that nudnik who owns X. So if they're talking about it, it's advertising. Why not throw a couple bucks on it? And I got Bitcoin because Bitcoin in theory, they say it's going to break 100,000. So you don't buy a whole coin, right? You get a piece of a coin. You do the math. Think of it like a stock slice. But they say when Bitcoin breaks 100K, it's just going to keep going. Let's go to the phones. You're on the air. Who's this?
Russell. Nice to talk to you, Royce.
Hey now, how are you, Russell?
I'm doing good, sir. If you got a second, I got a story about my introduction to Bitcoin.
Please.
For those listeners, your people out there that have kids, they may understand this a little bit. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's a game out there, an app called Roblox, right? So on Roblox, it's a platform and a lot of different games that the kids enjoy. There's a certain game called Adopt Me. Some of your listeners may know about Adopt Me, or their kids are playing Adopt Me, maybe even right now. So this Adopt Me game, I was playing with my daughter. I played for a good year and a half. And you raise these animals, and you can make them neon. You can join different animals together. They become neons or megas, and they increase in whatever, how their scarcity in the game. After a year and a half of collecting these digital pets, more or less, my daughter was basically done with it. And she left me with this inventory of giraffes and dragons and blah, blah, blah. I don't know how I even got on it, but I found out that you could sell these digital pets. There is a market for these little digital pets on Adopt Me. And their market is on eBay or on another platform called Gameflip. And some of these pets that I was just, sitting there and growing, doing nothing with, cost me nothing to buy, I could turn around and sell for $100, turn around and sell for $400, turn around and sell. One of these pets was worth, believe it or not, $1,000. And so I'm like, well, why am I just going to sit here with all these digital pets in my inventory, turn around and sell them? But to do that, I like poking around and figuring out how to actually do it, right? So I bought from this one guy just to see how the whole process works, and that unfolded. And I got to know this guy, and we got to talking, and he said, well, the real market is, because believe it or not, he was making over $100,000 a year selling these things on eBay. He was making a mint selling these digital pets on eBay. I'm like, well, how are you doing this? Because you have a limited amount. You got to be on the game all the time. He goes, no. What you do is you buy the inventory from these other people. Now that's where the Bitcoin comes in. We were buying these digital pets from hackers and various people online that would, hack into the people's account, and you buy those digital pets then for Bitcoin. It was all Bitcoin or sometimes Ethereum. So this guy introduced me to his sellers, right? And you get to know these people, and they all, had little catchphrases, names. But when it comes right down to it, they were 13-year-old kids in Pakistan, and 13-year-old kids that were, wherever around the world, around the globe. And I did it for a little bit. I would send Bitcoin out to these kids or whatever. But that's the thing about Bitcoin, is that it doesn't know an international boundary. And these kids could store all this Bitcoin, and there was, it was a way to purchase things globally. But it was not regulated. There's no regulation, right? And you have no idea who you're buying and selling from. So through this whole process of doing it, I stopped doing it after a couple months. But believe it or not, the money was there. It was crazy. eBay started cracking down on people that were selling because there was a lot of scams. There's a lot of people scamming. So, but I started talking to this guy, and he had another vision. He was working with this lady who was a artist out in California, and she was working 2 jobs just to stay afloat at USC, trying to get her art degree. There's something called NFTs. I don't know if you know what NFTs are.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh?
Oh, well, NFTs are like the ultimate scam. Go on.
Oh, okay. So the NFT, it's like a digital picture, right? That holds value. The NFT is tied to the Ethereum blockchain, created through the Ethereum blockchain. And this is like where you get the Bored Ape Club, and people like everyone that was on board originally with NFTs were in the Bored Ape Club. You got Jimmy Fallon was part of the Bored Ape Club, and LeBron James, and a whole bunch of people bought these NFTs called the Bored Ape Club, and they created a community and a connection within the blockchain. So you could share chats and whatever. You can go into your little Bored Ape Club thing, and you can be connected with all these famous people. So the amount of the Bored Ape Club and those NFTs, which is just a picture of a gorilla doing certain things, right? or an eighth. So these NFTs started becoming a thing. And yes, there was a lot of scamming there as well. Because what people are doing, we're creating these NFTs and trying to create a community. Those that were doing it on the up and up. But there's a lot of people that were not, and they were just doing it for a cash grab. So they would say, hey, look, the first 100,000 of these NFTs that sell, we're going to give away, a watch that's worth, $50,000. We're giving away cars. We're giving away trips. We're giving away this for each level that they sell on their blockchain. And then a lot of people weren't doing those giveaways because it's all just, on the blockchain. How is that regulated? No one's regulating it. No one's cracking down and saying,
but wait a second. Wait.
Doing it.
Wait, so you went from, just to recap, buying digital video game assets to crypto to NFTs. All because your child left stuff in a video game and you didn't know what to do with it.
Yep. Yeah, that sums it up. That about sums it up.
I mean, honestly, you could have just sold off the assets and walked away. So obviously this piqued your curiosity.
It did, because there's a lot of money in it. Now, so this NFT project, so we got involved in something, and we created a group of people. It was I don't know, there was 4 or 5 of us. We created a board, and we were going to do this thing called Modern Women Mission. And we were going to give back, but we were really going to do it, right? We were going to give back to female artists. And I actually created a charity that's still in existence with a skeleton crew of what we were going to do. And there were giveaways and everything else, and we were going to give back and do charity things for female artists. But that's when Samuel Beckman Fried, or whatever his name is, got in a whole bunch of trouble because of BlockFi and everything else that he was doing. It was more of a pyramid scheme, and crypto tanked. Ethereum tanked, Bitcoin tanked, everything tanked, and our crew that we spent a year forming this, right? And doing licensing agreements and trademark and all this other stuff. And we were really involved in doing this and having constant meetings. By the way, the people that you have to contact to do this, to create the blockchain for you, you have to pay them all in Bitcoin. So you're paying everybody in Bitcoin.
I am so cynical, because I am sitting here waiting for the scammer to show up.
The money was there for us to do it, and had Samuel Beckman Fried and that whole FTX thing not blown up, we were about ready to launch, and if we sold like we thought we were going to sell, then we were going to make, each of one of us was going to make well over $100,000 on this exchange, and it was quite lucrative, quite whatever. But as things fell apart and the blockchain fell apart during that point in time, a couple of years ago, our group kind of dissolved, and then there's no interest. And then finally, one of the leaders of the group says, we're just going to do a cash grab. We're going to take all this stuff out of there. We're not going to do any giveaways. We're just going to see what we can do as far as selling. And then they didn't even do it, because quite honestly, it became almost cost prohibitive, because the amount that we would have to pay this guy that was in Dubai, that we were paying in Bitcoin, it was not cost effective to do the NFT anymore. But yeah, there's a lot of good that can be done. When I was doing this whole thing, I started doing a whole bunch of seminars on NFTs, looking at the legal aspects and figuring out the licensing and the trademarks and everything that we need to do an actual NFT. And there's an actual NBA sells an NFT called Top Shop or something, where you can go and buy a digital trading card now of your favorite player.
Yeah.
Or you buy a digital package and you get a couple cards of whatever.
So hold on, because in many ways I feel like we didn't get the end of that story. So you guys decide when everything crashes to pull out, but obviously the crash, the implosion obviously must have been a loss. So you weren't scammed, but the house of cards came crashing down. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, basically. I wasn't scammed. I didn't lose. The only money that I lost was creating the charity, which is still in existence. And my idea is, and I put it out to any of your listeners out there, if they ever want to come in and contribute, help out, maybe they know how to run a charity better than I do. But I definitely want to use that charity for some good. So I don't consider it a loss. Yeah, I put time and money into the formation of it and keeping it around, but I don't consider it a loss. And I learned a ton about NFTs and licensing and trademarks and everything that goes into a project like that. So, God willing, and I even ended up putting it on my LinkedIn or whatever. If anyone wants to reach out and comment, yeah, I got that experience. I know how to do it right. But unfortunately, not a lot of people want to do it right.
Well, but no, because that's not what it's designed for. And the funny thing is, I shouldn't say funny, but with all the scams out there, you would think that for those that don't understand what the blockchain is, blockchain technology is pretty much what it sounds like. So a chain of information. So even an NFT, which uses blockchain technology, if I sold an NFT to Russell, and I was entitled, and Russell sold it, but I was somehow entitled to a piece of that sale or whatever, all of those relationships will be tied together through the blockchain. I was the original owner. I sold it to Russell. So the NFT scam, which is, in my opinion, like a multi-level marketing scam, okay, is we sell you this they're non-fungible tokens. So we're selling you something that is a non-physical item that actually requires computing power to keep going. So in many ways, you could talk about the environmental impact of NFTs, okay? But you're buying this little digital thing that is hosted on the blockchain, all right? And in the case of, I think, was it Wu-Tang that did that? Was it Wu-Tang that sold their album as an NFT? Do you remember that?
Yeah, somebody did. You're right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, one person owns it, and then if he sold it, the blockchain technology is there because, whether there was in the Wu-Tang instance or not, whether there is a payout to the original owner or not. Because I know some of the NFTs have like licensing tied to them, or not licensing. What am I looking for? What am I looking for? What's the word? You have you still keep a stake in it. So the original owner, because I think there were people that made like a movie and it was, oh, all right, well, if you sell this now or you sell this to someone else, the original owner gets a kickback. So the blockchain is there to preserve. But what I don't understand, Russell, because I know people that have been scammed fully. How is the blockchain not provide enough information to point to the scammer?
If you've ever, for those that haven't done a trade or sent tokens to another person, either through Coinbase or one of these other crypto agencies, there's absolutely no way you can track it, because what it is they'll send you kind of like Venmo. Okay, so Venmo, you have like a little at Russell Cloje or at Royce or whatever, right? But the blockchain, so that you send in a text or email this little QR code thing, and it's got just this long digit behind it, and that digit will always change. That'll never be the same, but that's tied to you for that moment. So like this kid in Pakistan, he would send me this little thing, and it'd be good for X amount of time, and I would send him his money via the blockchain. There's no way I could find that kid in Pakistan. There's no way, if he didn't then turn around and sell me what he wanted to. That's what we agreed to.
That's a regulation conversation, because the blockchain is there to provide that information. The problem is, because it's not regulated, that now this kid can hide behind whatever he's hiding behind, and the blockchain isn't actually showing who it is.
Right.
So
now I do have to say that during this whole time that we were doing the NFT, and something that did scare us was the DOJ did start cracking down, and they did arrest and hold accountable like 2 or 3 groups that were here in America that were doing this whole NFT and then not promising. So they were just doing a cash grab and didn't fulfill any of the ideas of what the NFT was for. So, and they got in a lot of trouble. They went to prison.
It is a strange world, and it's amazing. I think the takeaway for me and for anyone listening from your story should be the slippery slope, the rabbit hole, because you were inevitably sitting on assets, and short-term proposition, cash them out, move on. There was a learning experience there, but so many people, if you're not careful, right, because of the fact that there is no regulation, could have lost. And I was, as you're telling the story, I'm like, oh my God, he's going to lose everything. He sold all that stuff and he's going to lose it all. Thankfully, you didn't. But there's stories of people who are like, yeah, I lost my wallet. Like I had X amount of Bitcoin in my wallet, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, and I've lost my wallet. And there's no security for that. So even though the blockchain is supposed to provide a trail, a transaction trail, it doesn't provide security or regulation. So by
the way, if you lose your password for any of that, it's gone. You're not getting that back.
So it was fascinating to me.
So if you don't know how to log into your account,
right,
then that's it. It's done.
I was trying to figure out when this kid did his thing the other day, how you purchase that. And it's not available on every exchange, right? So you had to go find. I didn't know any of this a week ago. So I appreciate the rabbit hole you went down, because I'm like, oh my gosh, this kid did a 30K pump and dump, and now there's millions, there's an upside there. And anybody who's ever done day trading knows if I just get in and get out and ride the wave, that's how you make money. But you have to be present for it. And if you miss that out, you could really mess up. So, and I do everything manually. Like I'm not very good at setting things just because I like to be there in real time. But anyway, so this kid does his thing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to figure out, how do I buy some of this? Whatever it was called, quant. How do I get some quant? And I call Nick, and Nick is like telling me all the obvious places. I'm like, I don't see it. And he hadn't heard about it. So and he's like, well, no, you got to go try this other thing. So now I'm downloading this other thing, and I'm like, what? I can't find quant. It turns out quant was built on not Ethereum, but quant is built on the back of another coin called Solera. Does that sound right?
Solera, okay, yeah.
All right, but I didn't understand this stuff. So basically, because like then I thought, well, how do you launch a coin? Because I've looked into NFTs and how to launch an NFT. But basically, what it is this kid had to use a coin as the foundation to launch his coin. So now you basically need to have a Solera wallet to be able to even buy this stuff. So you couldn't even use your traditional Coinbases and stuff like that because it wasn't available over there. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, so I'm looking at all this stuff, and it's like, now you got to tie your Solera wallet or whatever it is to, and I barely know what I'm talking about. You got to tie your Solera wallet to this other app. And I'm like, what? So I'm calling Nick, and I'm like, Nick, what do I do? And by the time I figured it out and actually understood how this talked to that and all the relationships and the wallets and the exchanges and all that, I was like, I'm not buying it. I'm like, I've gone through I'm not buying it.
It's a lot to take in.
Well, it just felt at that point it would have been too emotional to buy at that point, because I had just gone through all of this experience that buying it now would have been too much of a whim. And you want to know what happened, Russell? It crashed the next morning.
Oh, geez. Thank God.
Thank God. I didn't buy it, but I had my learning experience. So I took my learning experience and I invested in Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I'll give this advice to the people that
this is not financial advice.
If they're really interested. Yeah, this is not financial advice.
This is life advice.
Not at all financial advice. What I have found useful is, and I'm not promoting it, advertising for it or anything, but there's an app called Acorns. The Acorn app takes like if you tie it to your bank card, it ties your spare change in and dumps it into an investment account. And I've been using it for a year. I find it wonderful. But their investment account not only does your traditional investments, but you can take some of it and invest in Bitcoin if you want to, and there's less of a risk than just buying it outright on like Coinbase and then sitting there watching it go up or down.
So
I think you can buy it on Coinbase. I know you can buy it on Cash App, and you can buy it on maybe
just going wider.
Venmo allows you to.
I'm sure you're busy, and I don't want to hold you up if you have to go. So if you have to go, just drop, and I won't take it personally. But I think the larger thing, Russell, is people need to start putting their money to work for themselves. And I don't think most people think about how to use their money to make more money. And unfortunately, most folks are so hard pressed, and they're going, week to week, just trying to keep afloat, that they don't even have time to think about it. But to what you're just describing there, it's very, very easy to have that compound, and then the next thing you know, you have some money in savings you weren't even looking at. Kind of a set it, forget it thing. So I think I
gotta say I really like that app. They even have what is that called? An IRA that you can do.
Right.
So it's really nice, and it'll just take maybe $10 out of your account over a week or whatever you want to set it for, and it's an interesting way, a cheap way to really start saving for your future.
And who knows? A lot of people who hop jobs probably don't even realize they're sitting on 401ks tucked away in different places. I was reading something about that the other day. People discovering if you've hopped jobs that you may just have money sitting somewhere in a Fidelity account or something somewhere. So maybe not people are marketing apps for all this crap, right? So they're like, oh, you download this app, I'll show you how many accounts you're signed up for every month and save you money. So I saw something that said, oh, sign up for this app and we'll show you how many 401ks you have out there that you haven't claimed. It's like, oh, that's interesting. But I encourage people before. Yes, sir.
No, I was going to drop out, but before I go, I just wanted to say thank you for starting this podcast and starting the radio show. I like hearing your true voice. I know a lot of times at the park over the years you felt like you needed to be filtered, but I feel that we're seeing and hearing the true voice, and I enjoy it. So thank you, and keep it up, man. It's been wonderful.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate the feedback, and it's always a pleasure to chat with you. Have a great day.
All right. Take care, guys.
Such a good guy. And I appreciate that. And, look, somebody the other day said, oh, he's boycotting the parks. I was in the park last night, but I like having these conversations. I don't like that feedback that I was picking up there. And case in point, right? Russell's been watching forever. So nice to have that chat. What I was saying, and thank you for the kind words, but what I was saying is finding the money. Putting money to work for you, putting your money to work for you, finding money where you don't even realize it may be sitting. I didn't get into the stock market till the pandemic. A lot of people don't even know how to buy stocks. We sat down on a live one day and I showed folks how to do that. I didn't know how to buy Bitcoin 2 weeks ago. But I finally took the time to do it, and I'm glad I did. And, percentage-wise, it's already worth the investment. So I just encourage folks to, there are ways to make money while you sleep. And if you start to think about that and you start to make your money work for you, then that's where you can start to kind of break out. And I think one of the problems, and I'm going back to the entrepreneur thing, but one of the problems in chasing the American dream is that people sit on that line. I heard Steve Harvey describe this once, and I actually don't really care for the man, but it's a really good example. He talked about jumping, making that jump. And I think most folks stand on that line, on that edge. They have a great idea. They know that they've got something, and they're passionate about it. But they're stuck in a grind, and they can't abandon that grind and take that jump because they can't afford to. Most people aren't afforded the runway to take that jump, to make that leap, whatever it may be, whatever the business is, because I'm sure most of you out there have an idea. I'm sure most of you out there Have this thing in the back of your mind that you would love to execute on, that would make you so happy, that you're so passionate about, that you'd be ready to pour your all into, but you can't make the jump. Finding ways to free your time up, because time is money, is going to get you there. So that's why I love this stuff, like even with like the Bitcoin of it all. Yeah, sure, it's going to break 100K, but you can still buy into it. It's never too late. Even if you put in a little bit of money and you see, a 10% return. I mean, I think Doge went up 10% the other day. So I saw a 10% return. It was marginal dollars and cents wise, but you got to look at the percentage, right? So if you can put your money in places where you can see incremental growth and make a little bit of money for yourself, you should do it. I'm not saying that's going to be the thing that's going to let you jump, but every little bit, right? And that goes back to the conversation about putting a dollar amount on your time, because time is money. And that's why so many folks don't make the leap, because they don't have the time and they don't have the money, right? I'm too busy over here working to get the money, So by trying to make some of your money work for you and make money, all right, does free up a little bit of time. It's not going to be the end all be all. But I know how it goes. I've been there 100 times. You have an idea, and the only thing holding you back is that 9-to-5 job. The only thing, right? And I just hope that, I hope that we don't give up teaching that lesson to kids. And that goes right back to the Muppet conversation and Jim Henson and Walt Disney and really celebrating the legacy of men that lived the American dream, that created such an impact on our culture, that they inspired the next generation. What's lost on me is how, like what did Bob Iger watch when he was growing up? Like what inspired? Like I would love to hear from Bob Iger. What cartoons did you watch growing up? What movies inspired you? He's going to tell you his favorite character growing up was Al Roker. The reason George Lucas was so successful with Star Wars is because he grew up literally absorbing Akira Kurosawa movies and Buck Rogers Saturday morning serials. Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, right? So he absorbed these things, right? And then he regurgitated them into Star Wars. There's nothing original about Star Wars. Star Wars is a remix of other people's work. But that's the cycle of creativity. You don't get fresh IP without inspiring the next generation of storytellers. You're not going to get another George Lucas because you're not creating that runway that we just talked about. If all you're doing is beating the same IPs to death over and over again and not investing in original storytelling, then you're not going to have the next round of characters. What happens when you run out of Star Wars? And according to Lucasfilm, they've already run out of Star Wars, which I find hard to believe. But what happens when you run out of Marvel characters? What happens when you have used Elsa and Moana to death? And you've used Buzz and Woody and Mike and Sully to death and Lightning McQueen to death. Then what? You're just going to go out there and wait for somebody else, buy up their story? Yeah, that's a strategy. That's part of it. I get it. But if you just took a tiny percentage of the money that you use for these giant tentpole pictures and invested it in original storytelling. Now, I don't know what Disney's up to, but some of these other studios have what's called an incubator, all right? And they'll take young talent and they'll incubate them. In fact, Marvel had an incubator, and you've heard me say this before, but Nicole Perlman was in the Marvel incubator and developed the Guardians of the Galaxy script, and that creep James Gunn plucked it out of development and got all the credit for it. And don't get me started on James Gunn. Or maybe you want to call in and get me started on James Gunn. I don't know. 253-263-1540. 253-263-1540. Now, the Guardians of the Galaxy, they were characters. They were obscure characters, but they were mined from the depths of Marvel. Okay? That works. But at some point, you're going to run out of that. I mean, what are you going to do? The X-Force? And then after the Fantastic Four and the X-Men and the I mean, you're running, like, how many different, there's only so much you can do, you know, and Marvel's already showing cracks. So, you know, acquisition's a great mechanism, but what we've seen with acquisition is that they milk it all the way to the bare bone, and then they keep going. And that's why your Moana presence is going to keep going in these parks. Where's the original storytelling? At one point, Pixar were original storytellers. At one point, Toy Story was an original idea. Monsters, Inc. was an original idea. Go read up on the history of Pixar. Go read up on Ed Catmull and John Lasseter and how Apple was so huge for the development of Pixar and for saving Pixar. Go read up on how the original version of Toy Story was completely scrapped and reworked because there was no soul in the characters. Pixar was original storytelling. And much like Walt Disney set out to innovate, you know, most people don't realize, and this is a phrase I say, most people don't realize. Well, guess what? A lot of people don't know a lot of things. Walt Disney pioneered feature-length animation. It was said that you couldn't even evoke emotion out of animation, let alone sustain a feature-length story. And Walt said, no, I guarantee you I can sustain a feature-length story through animation and evoke emotion. That was a technical achievement. Pixar was born off the idea, similarly, that you could make a feature-length animated film. The most that was going on back then were little shorts. And by the time Toy Story came out, it was jaw-dropping because it was photorealistic. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. It was a feature-length film. But it was original. Buzz and Woody didn't come from anywhere. It came from somebody's brain. Now we look at them and they're IP. But they didn't start as IP. You have to invest in original storytelling. Good stories will always win. And you are going to hit a ceiling. We talk about this all the time. You're going to hit a ceiling. I understand why they're making Monsters, Inc. land. Because what else are they going to do? They're not going to invest in building a Muppet land because nobody knows anything about the Muppets anymore. These next generation of kids don't get the Muppets. But Monsters, Inc. has been around forever. They're household characters. Buzz and Woody are household characters. I remember when the first Toy Story came out. Buzz and Woody were brand new. Do you know that when the first Toy Story movie came out, you couldn't even buy toys for them? When the first Toy Story movie came out, Pixar Disney was only a distributor. Pixar was an independent studio. Disney was purely the distributor. There were no toys. Pixar did not think to have toys for the movie. It took 6 months to put the toys out to market. They did not see it as a merchandising opportunity. They were too fixated on accomplishing the task at hand, which was feature-length 3D animated storytelling. There were no toys merchandised for the movie. It took 6 months. 6 months! You're on the air. Who's this?
Hey, Royce. It's Andrew from New Jersey. I just want to say I think you spoke very volume to what you just said just now about, you know, with IPs and everything. And I think that speaks volume to the core of what the company has become. It's become so far away from original storytelling that even in their rides, they have nothing original. And I remember a time when rides themselves used to be very original, had their own story. But I think unless something fundamentally changes within the company, none of this is going to change.
No. And look, I say this a lot. There's a lot of things I say a lot, but that's what happens when you're talking this much in any given day. There's things I know that are coming to the parks that I'm not allowed to talk about because I've been sworn to not talk about them because so few people know. And it's just, all I can tell you is they're beating the same dead horse over and over and over again.
Yeah. How long is it going to take for something to go, out of popularity? Because that happens all the time. When things get popular, okay, it's great to capitalize on that and make merchandise off it and make a ride out of it. But what's going to happen when it's no longer popular? You're just going to replace it with something else that's popular at the time, and that's the system that they're going to keep pushing.
Well, but here's the thing. Monsters, Inc. is like 2 decades old. So is it even really that popular? Or is it just safer? And do they know that they can get more mileage out of the brand? In other words, they know that, we do this, that, and the other with it, a Monsters, Inc. series, a sequel. So if they're looking at a production pipeline and they're doing that because of that and they have nothing Muppets in the pipeline, then it makes sense whether I like it or not. But if the best you can do is lean on 20-year-old IP, then something is dangerously wrong with the creative engines inside the company.
Yeah. And do you think that on a business perspective, do you think that there's a lot of red tape involved with creative storytelling that prevents a lot of that from coming into fruition?
Well, I was actually about to go on a completely sarcastic rant, but I think that I'll do that in a minute. But I think that it really is the business. It is. And I don't think I played the clip of Matt Damon talking about this, but I cited this last week. It is the fact that you don't have DVD sales, right? Streaming doesn't bring you in the kind of the same revenue structure as DVD sales or international pre-sales go as far as the motion picture business goes. So if you can't pre-sell it, if you can't count on the DVD revenue, then what do you do? You stick to 4-quadrant global pictures. And that's why you get all these Marvel movies, because they're 4-quadrant. 4-quadrant meaning it appeals to everything and everyone. So when you're trying to appeal to everyone, you can't dare to be different. You have to be safe. It's like you have to have, in order, if we're looking at this like it's food, in order for it to appeal to everyone, it's got to be as bland as possible. As soon as you start to put in, I don't like spice, I don't like sweet, I don't like too much salt, so I got to keep it as bland as possible. All right? What's happening with Marvel and these live-action remakes from Disney, like the Lion King live-action remake, do you want to know what that's the equivalent to? That's the food equivalent to tofu. It is a base with no flavor. It is the cinematic equivalent to tofu. It is.
No, you're right.
Who needs a Mufasa
right.
movie? I know what happens to Mufasa. He doesn't make it.
Yeah. And also, it seems like in that movie, too, it also makes it seem like Scar was a good character at one point, and then it looks like, excuse my language, but it looks like maybe Mufasa might do something crappy to him that may put him on the pedestal of becoming a villain.
I mean, in many ways, Scar's relatable, is he not?
Yeah. I mean, but that it also kind of ruins our perception of Mufasa in a way.
I don't know if I actually agree with what I just said. I just said it to be provocative, but I relate to Zazu. Like, honestly, that's the character in The Lion King where Zazu's like, get me the hell out of here. What is wrong with these people? Everybody thinks they're worth more than they are. Like, where I got to go somewhere else. Like, he just wants to be on a beach somewhere sipping on something, right? Like, Zazu's over it.
Yeah.
What I was going to say, my sarcastic comment, Andrew, and this is just me thinking out loud here. Disney wants to get into more live sports and all this stuff. In the spirit of influencer boxing matches, why don't I box Bob Iger live on Disney Plus? Okay? I'm not a boxer. He's not a boxer. It's an even match. Okay? It'll be great for the live sports business. I think I could take him. And I'm closer in age to him.
I can see that.
Yeah, I'm closer in age to him than whatever Paul brother fought. I still am not clear which one fought the other night. Not that I can call it a fight. Okay? But I'm closer in age than he was to Tyson. I'll just call him Paul because I don't know which one was. I really don't know which Paul brother was in the ring with Mike Tyson to this day, and I don't want to know. But I'm just saying, I will box Bob Iger live on Disney Plus. It'll be fantastic. It'll lag. It'll be great. It'll be like a slideshow. But I mean, that's my really, really polite way of saying that I would love to punch the man in the face legally.
Yeah, I just saw a video just recently from WDW Pro, and he made a joke saying nobody hates Bob Iger more than I do, and part of that was they were talking about the new Cars attraction. Now, I've been looking more into this, and the more I look at it, the more I hate it, because optically, so it's supposed to be a dirt track attraction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this new technology that they're using is where the cars themselves, they're not on a track. It's not on a rail or anything. It's self-driving, and there's no rail.
It's not even new technology. It's a 7-year-old stock ride system. Now, okay, look, most ride systems are stock, so that's not a fair sort of jab. But it's a 7-year-old system.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have plastic dirt?
What happened? Yeah. I'm sorry. Continue.
No, that was it. I was listening to you.
Oh, when it's on a dirt track, and what's going to happen when it rains? And I know you know for a fact, because you're there in Florida, you know how much it rains down there almost all the time, especially during the summer. What's going to happen? That dirt track is going to become muddy.
No.
And then they're going to have to close the attraction a lot.
It's not going to be real dirt. I don't know why everybody thinks it's going to be real dirt. It's not going to be real dirt. Look at what they did with Cars in California Adventure. It's not going to be real dirt. It's just going to be brown. It's going to be brown ground. That's it. It's not going to be dirt. I promise you that. I promise you.
Okay.
Because what are you going to have? People are going to walk with their muddy footprints into the Country Bear Jamboree? No, it's not going to be real dirt. That's not practical. It's going to be fake. It's just like Cars Land. There's no dirt on those roads.
Right.
So, but it's funny that everybody.
Well, I think. I think the reason why I thought it was going to be a dirt track was because of the footage that was seen in Brazil.
Yeah, but Disney won't do that. They won't do that. And by the way, I mean, they'd have to buy the dirt, right? I mean, I'm joking. They would just dig it up from out back. But they're just going to cheap out. That's first of all, that's a level of detail that current State of Imagineering wouldn't even participate in if they wanted to. That's your saving grace there. Imagineering's way too lazy for dirt when they can spray paint it brown. I do not like my levels right now.
Right.
I'm battling with these. You know what it is? Is that I have the speaker that I'm using for the phone calls, and I want to keep the speaker level up loud enough that the folks on TikTok can hear it because there's no line. And then at the same time, I'm not trying to get feedback through my mic. And not that any of y'all need to know about that, but I got to fill time with something. Andrew, I'm going to keep moving on. There's another phone call in the hopper. Do you have anything else you want to say?
Nothing else except it's sad that, Muppets is going to be replaced. I'd rather Star Wars Launch Bay be replaced, but that's it. But anyway, continue with your show. I love what you do, and hope to talk to you later.
Thank you, sir. That is Andrew in New Jersey, a regular caller on the show. I love that we have regulars. You're on the air. Who's this?
Hey, Royce. It's Colleen.
Hey, Colleen. How are you?
Colleen, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm just I feel like a DJ. I'm mixing like crazy over here trying to play with these levels.
I know. Yeah. This is the only day I can call in, but I've been interested. I listen at work because I can say, oh, I'm listening to a podcast, so it's different than watching a live. So it's kind of cool. But, when you're talking about the Muppets, my son, who's 21, is very upset about the Muppets going away, which I find interesting because we've grown up with the Muppets. Like, we made sure our kids knew about the Muppets. But one thing I was thinking about the Rock and Roller Coaster Switch is if they made it like Guardians, where it's a different song whenever you ride it, it could be kind of fun.
Well, that's what they do with Aerosmith. I mean, they don't market it that way.
If they do that again with Muppets, that'd be really fun, because I think Guardians, I think the ride is great, but I think part of the draw is that you're always checking to see what kind of, what song did you get? I see it all over TikTok. Like, what song did you get? I
know.
So
we'll see. We'll see. I think the Muppets retheme, putting the Electric Mayhem on there, and then they said, I just think it's lazy. And they said that, what did they say? It'll be the Muppets with some of the biggest stars. Just remember that line. The Muppets with some of the who are the biggest stars going to be? It's going to wind up being like who? Like Bluey? Like, who's the biggest star?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm like. Is it going to be like a Disney's version of a biggest star? That's all I'm saying. Like, it's going to be a Disney. Like, I was going to say Zac Efron, but that's a way outdated reference. Like, I was trying to think of like a Disney Channel star. It's not going to be.
I don't know who a big star would be right now.
Well, no, but I mean, if you're not paying Aerosmith for the licensing rights, I sure as heck don't expect the Muppets and Paul McCartney.
Exactly.
And
I keep thinking, going back to Launch Bay, like Andrew had said, like, Launch Bay is such a just unused space. Like,
right.
I don't know. And even going back to Monsters, Inc., like that, when that first got announced, I thought, why? It's like you said, it's 2 decades old. 20 years ago, I said they should build a ride with the doors swinging. Like, my son and I were talking about that probably 10 years ago. Like, how awesome would that, but it was relevant back then. It's not relevant now. And I just don't understand their thought. I mein, I loved Toy Story. I thought it should end at 4. Having Toy Story 5 annoys me. Yeah. I don't know what they're doing.
Well, but your point is the same for villains, because ages ago it was we'll get a villains park, and I'm glad we're not getting a villains park right now, because they would botch it. But this Villains Land, I'm sorry, it's going to be a ride, maybe 2, and a couple restaurants and some stores. And you'd be like, well, what else are you going to put in the land? I'm just saying, it's going to be super low budget. It's not going to be the thing we waited for. And by the way, they're not even calling it Monstropolis. That worries me. Did you notice that? It's called Monsters Inc. Land. They didn't say we're building Monstropolis, because if we said we're building Monstropolis, then we've immediately raised the budget.
Right.
Because if I tell you I'm building Monstropolis, I expect monsters suddenly the whole veneer changes. The same way that they built Galaxy's Edge, but they didn't have to worry about making it look like Tatooine and Mos Eisley. It feels like Mos Eisley, but it's not Mos Eisley.
Right.
That's the space.
I would rather them dump all the money into a real villains park, because I think that's one of the aspects they haven't done enough of, is with the villains. And people are really into the villains right now. And I think they could really spend their money wisely, but they're just too busy trying to quickly keep up with Universal, I think,
which is such a, first of all, I don't even, these are, if I don't even agree with what you just said, and I'm going to tell you why.
Really?
Yeah, because if you're trying to keep up with Universal,
not surprising.
No, because I mean, like, it makes sense what you're saying about them trying to keep up with Universal, but here's why. Here's why I don't want to believe what you said.
They're different entities. They're totally different entities.
It's scary because they're racing. And if this is them trying to keep up with Universal, they had such a heads up. Those guys built that they had to buy the land, then they had to develop it. Mm-hmm. So they had all the time in the world to respond to Universal. That's why I don't want to buy into that.
Right.
But I think you're actually right, even though I don't want to believe it. Because there's such a mishmash of an organization that they are racing. I just refuse to. I know that the company doesn't have a plan for anything.
No, because putting cars where they're putting it is ridiculous.
Right. So, but play that out, Colleen.
If they were going to put cars, they should have taken the same one from California, because that is an awesome ride.
Correct.
Don't, if you're going to bring a ride over,
but it didn't start that way. It wasn't, let's bring cars over, we need a Cars presence. It was operations is complaining about the island. Let's solve this problem. We could put 100 different things in there, and Bob goes, that one. So, but play out your point.
Yeah.
If this is truly all a response to Epic Universe, then everybody should be fired at the executive level, because they had probably a decade to plan for it. And everything they're doing now seems to be a visceral response without any real direction or vision. So I don't agree that this is a response to Universal, even though I'm probably wrong. And maybe that's just me holding on hope that they're not that stupid at the top. But much like my heart told me Muppets was going, I know you're right. And I just refuse to. I'm holding on hope. But I just know that they're scrambling now to appease Wall Street and to appease shareholders and to appease the board. Okay? And if they really had a vision, then you wouldn't have gotten a slapdash announcement about Muppets and the future of Muppet Vision 3D, okay, like we did the other day. You wouldn't have gotten a half-baked D23 presentation. You wouldn't have gotten the blue sky presentation from the prior D23. So I do agree with you, okay? All right, now I agree with you.
I have to say, I mean, how much I've come to the parks in the past.
Yeah.
I think last year I was there 4 or 5 times, and I don't have an AP. My son and I love Disney. I did not come once this year because I was annoyed by everything. I had no desire to come, and I couldn't afford to. I'm still paying off last year's trips.
Last year you did the Christmas party too, right?
Right. I came to the Christmas party. We came to the Halloween party with you guys. I got annoyed by the Christmas party. We came to the Christmas party 2 years ago. Before I had my knee replacement. And I was in a wheelchair, and it was annoying because there's so many people that you just couldn't get around. There was so many people. And I thought, if you're spending that kind of money for a Christmas party, it shouldn't be like a normal day. There should be less people. You should be able to have more fun. And we just couldn't get around anywhere. Halloween party was fun, but the same kind of thing. And so I probably wouldn't come to the party again. My daughter wanted me to bring her, and I just was like, I don't want to spend the money on it. And I looked into it because my birthday is Sunday, and there's a Christmas party Sunday, and I thought, well, shoot, maybe I could come in, but it's Thanksgiving weekend, and it was going to cost her and I think $1,600 to come in for 2 nights in one day. And I thought, this is ridiculous.
Well, first of all, happy birthday. Let me say that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's next weekend. But the trip I am coming in June is a free trip. So, I won it through I earned it through Pampered Chef. So I'm coming in June, but I'm not paying a dime for it. I'm happy about that. So, I don't know. It's annoying that I can't come to the happiest place on earth because I can't afford it. And we definitely are high middle class. So, I mean, if we can't do it, well, I don't know how people are doing it.
It's the most magical place on earth, first of all. Number one. Sorry.
Yes,
I have to.
Yes.
The Disney geek in me has
sorry.
to correct you.
Yeah.
Happiest place is Disneyland. And number 2, today is Keena's birthday. Happy birthday, Keena. I love you and adore you. So happy birthday to Keena. She can finally drink, which is probably not good for any of us.
Oh.
So,
yeah, my son just turned 21 a couple weeks ago, so yes.
But why would you pay? Let me ask you this. Why would you pay to go back to the Halloween party this year when you could spend less and then, to your point, do like Epcot after hours and pretty much have full run of the place?
Yeah. That's it. I would rather do an after hours thing because I feel like it's so much more worth the money.
Yeah.
They don't change the parades. They don't change the stage shows. They don't change the fireworks. Nothing changes. So if you go once, you've seen it.
I just want to be able to walk around and be left alone. Look, a little secret between you and I. I'm not a big fan of people. Okay? You know, like I like my people, but generally speaking, I don't want anything to do with people. People are crazy. You know, my dad always says to me, Royce, people are crazy. People, and he says it like all the time. But he's not wrong. People are nuts. I don't want anything to do with them.
No, they are.
They're crazier than ever.
Yep.
And this internet, I say this internet like I'm like A, I live in Boca Raton, B, I'm 80, and C, it's new, right? But this internet has this internet has ruined everything.
Sorry, that was funny.
Listen, I think it's going to be a big deal one day. I really do. You know. Oh my Lord! I remember when it was just a series of tubes.
Well, I'm old enough to remember the very first Today Show where they're like, "Here's an internet address, and what is this again?"
Right.
I remember being like, "What are they saying?"
Right.
Yeah, I'm old.
Yeah, the internet. I can't believe I just said that.
But yeah. So, I don't know if you want to. If like you want to totally change topics.
Yeah.
But I was messaging you about your last week. Your podcast was talking about the wedding stuff.
Yes.
And I told you about how my wedding was so expensive and crazy.
Yeah. I've never been married, so I wouldn't know.
Talk about that or not?
No. Let's talk. But first of all, I love that your loophole because first of all, I know Colleen. She works in a church, and she can't watch lives. But the fact that you're listening to a pod, like I love that loophole.
Yeah, I find loopholes. Don't worry.
I know. Well, you're very savvy. Why so much money on the wedding? How much?
1997, my parents spent $25,000 on my wedding.
Oh my
I'm
God!
an only child.
You could have a DVC membership.
Oh, you know what? This, like, my husband and I talk about all the time. We were both passengers in this whole thing. We didn't choose anything. My dad was freshly retired. He was 59, had nothing better to do. And that particular year before my wedding, we went to 12 weddings. And so every single wedding we went to, he would write stuff down that he liked. And my wedding had to have it.
Oh, yeah.
And if we were in the planning stages and we went to a wedding and they had something we hadn't planned, oh my gosh, we had to have it. And I just kept looking at him going, we don't need that. We don't need that. Like, what are you doing? So we go to dinner, and every time we go to dinner, he'd whip out his folder and we'd have to go through the checklist. And I'd be like, Dad, can we just enjoy dinner? Like, I don't want to talk my wedding every single day.
That sounds like Kenzie's mom. Because, like, Kenzie said her mom is, like, just over. Like, I guess that's what you're responding to because she talked about it on that episode.
Yes.
But
yeah, because Kenzie talked about it, yeah.
But listen, would you, like, I don't know. First of all, I've met Colleen's husband, and total side note, I'll never forget, we went to Kimonos, and then Colleen's husband's like, oh, I'll give you a ride back to your car. And it was like me, Yoey, I don't remember who else was there. Colleen, her husband.
It was Tom, let's see, who's there? It was in the car, it was you and Yoey.
I don't even know. It doesn't even matter. But it was like a clown car. I mean, we were sitting on top. I mean, what do you drive? A Pinto?
I think we had an Escape.
I wanted to escape out of that car.
We went to the car.
Correct.
I think we had an Escape.
That's exactly what I tried to do, but I couldn't get out.
I know. There's 4 people in the back. I know it's you and Yoey, and I think Jess maybe, and then
I don't know. I felt like a jelly bean stuck inside a whoopee cushion. I mean, like it was horrible. It was horrible. Anyway, I digress.
But remember, you forgot.
So listen,
it was during the hurricane. And that got closed.
I would have rather been in the hurricane than in that car.
It was a hurricane.
No offense. No, it was very sweet to give me the ride, but I mean, I'm still trying to get out of the car 3 years later. So
I know.
But all right. So wait. Would you have forgone the entire wedding and like use that money to buy a house or invest in, like, would you have rather have done that?
Oh, yes. I mean, it was people. Okay, so I'm not ungrateful. It was the most extravagant wedding I've ever been to, and it was my own wedding, and people still talk to it to this day. Like there are people that still mention my wedding. My aunt on my husband's side will say, every wedding we go to will say, yours was better. I'm like, you can't say that at someone else's wedding. Like, shush.
I mean, you can.
It was just ridiculous. We had like, butler past hors d'oeuvres. We had strawberry trees with the chocolate strawberries hanging from the tree. We had soup, salad, and mastacholi as an appetizer.
Ooh,
with sorbet in
bake?
between. And my, what?
Mastacholi bake?
Mastacholi with soup and salad because my dad couldn't decide. So he just wanted both. And then my husband's family, you have to understand, my husband's family is all from Ohio. I love Ohio, sort of. But their weddings were in parks, potlucks. So when the sorbet came out to cleanse your palate, because we had to do that, they thought that was dessert. So they started asking for more mastacholi. And then all of a sudden out comes the 4 meats, 2 potatoes, 3 veggies.
All right, can you stop? You're making me
my
hungry.
Dad couldn't decide.
Stop it. I don't even think I ate today yet.
It was insane. Dinner took like 3 hours. And then we had to have the Cherries Jubilee because they would come out.
Stop.
And it was like this
Colleen.
flambe thing, so they're walking out with the fire. It was insane.
Colleen.
Insane.
Colleen.
And not just that. They had to have the premier liquor with wine, white and red, on all the tables because they didn't know who would like what. So they prepared. They planned all that. They paid for the bride's dresses. They paid for the tuxes for the grooms. They paid for everyone's hotel that came in from out of town.
Are you done?
It was insane.
Are you done talking about food?
Yes, I'm done.
All right, I haven't eaten anything yet. I haven't eaten yet today. I just had coffee. And you're sitting here.
Well, I had to tell my story.
I know, but you could have just said buffet or appetizers. I didn't need a friggin' menu.
I'm only having coffee. I haven't eaten yet either.
All right, good. At least we're in the same boat.
Whining.
No, okay. So here's my thing. Now, I've never been married. I don't intend to ever get married. Famous last words.
Smart decision.
Aside from apologizing to whomever agrees to marry me, I would suggest that we don't. The next thing I would say is suggest that we don't waste money on a wedding. Like, I would rather, going back to putting money to work for yourself, that's a chunk of change. I'd rather just invest that in something. Or whatever. Or buy I had a buddy, who got married and did the whole thing kind of like you're talking about. Probably spent $25,000-$30,000 on the wedding, right? Had to have it like far away from everywhere at some like vineyard, the open bar, the hotel rooms for people, the whole thing, And then they lived in a rented house for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Why not buy a house and say, hey, I'm going to have a small get-together in my backyard, a housewarming party / celebration of the wedding. Look, I grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, so right outside of Philadelphia. All right? Mm-hmm. Bucks County, Pennsylvania, very, very well known for being a swing county and deciding the fate of the nation. Anyway, I digress. So I grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and the bar mitzvah industry, because they would these parents would book out like things down in Center City, Philadelphia, and they would actually bring in like a full-on circus. So I remember my sister went to like a bat mitzvah with like a full-on Barnum and Bailey routine in it. Like they had circus animals.
Oh
because it is competitive, and because people do want you to go to the next one and go, well, yours was better. So like there is a competitive side, and I've talked to Kenzie about that because you feel like in this social media age, and by the way, that stuff, that bar mitzvah stuff, the circus, there was no social media, but it was so crazy. It was like everybody outdid the next one. And it was cringy. And I'm just looking at all this money wasted at showboating. And now with social media, it's probably worse than ever. By the way.
Well, see, the problem is now my parents, like my dad, will be like, we spent $25,000 on your wedding. Like, you didn't have to. Because, like, we'd go cake tasting. I'm sorry, it's food again. So just hold on. We'd go cake tasting. And the cake that my dad wanted was $600, and I picked a $300 one. So we'd get in the parking lot, and I'd say, look, I saved you $300. And he's like, but you still cost me $300. Like, but I saved you $300. Like, I didn't even get the dress I wanted because I went with a cheaper one because I knew how much they were spending.
Wait a second. That's emotionally manipulative.
Well, that's been my whole life.
Oh, well, do you want to have that
My whole
conversation?
life.
Although
But-
you're at a church, maybe this isn't the place to have that conversation.
No, my brother-in-law is a Catholic priest. But I am not like, and I work in an Episcopal church, but I am not like.
No, that's like
my
really,
eyes are open to a lot of things.
That's so manipulative. Like, don't spend the money and then hold it over my head, especially if I didn't ask. And then you being like, you're trying to save
I'm an old
money.
child.
I would have just been like, you know what? I remember my mom trying to ground me once by threatening to cancel my bar mitzvah. And you can imagine, like, same thing, like my mom planned the bar mitzvah. I didn't plan the bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
There was the ceremony, right? Listen to this. There was the ceremony. Right. Then there was the luncheon. And then there was the bar mitzvah party, which I chose to have at my house because I thought it was stupid to rent out a venue. I had a pool in my backyard. I was like, let's just have a big pool party. Right. Then they took me to Israel, and I had to get bar mitzvah in Israel.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. I'm like, this is so my mom threatened. She grounded me under the threat of taking everything off the table for my bar mitzvah. And I was like, okay. Like cool. Like, I don't want to have to learn two different Haftorahs. They made me learn. I had to learn a Haftorah in Israel, surrounded by a bunch of tourists that didn't even know that I made up the tunes of the Haftorah because nobody knew it. The rabbi goes, "Listen, just sing it however you want. Nobody cares." You know, like, so I didn't want it. Don't hold it over my head. She tried to take it away from me. I said, "Please do."
Yeah.
I can't stand that. I don't like pomp and circumstance.
Now, my daughter is in a very serious relationship. They're talking marriage, but not for like 2 or 3 years, but because her boyfriend is a doctoral program for physical therapy, and they don't want to do anything until he's out. They're being very responsible. She's a nurse. She's saved a ton of money because she wants a house. But she was talking about her wedding. They said, we're starting to talk about it. And she asked me, she's like, are you going to be like grandpa? And I said, oh, hell no. No, you get what you want. Like, I'm almost to the point where, like, you can do what you want. I don't care. You say, like, I'll help you plan it, but it's going to be what you want. Because I didn't get what I wanted, you know. And she doesn't want to be married in a church.
$25,000 and you didn't get what you wanted.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, and I got left at the rehearsal dinner. So rehearsal dinner was at Olive Garden, and we all had this thing, and I got left there because no one thought about taking me home.
Wait, you got left?
I came out of the bathroom and everyone was gone.
No, wait, you got left at your own rehearsal dinner?
Yes.
Who leaves the bride? I mean, by the way, I would have.
My cousin.
Where's your husband?
My cousin. My husband went with his friends, and my parents went home, and they thought Jerry had me, and Jerry thought my cousin had me. My cousin thought my parents had me, and they all went home. And so my cousin got home, and I wasn't there.
And you
and
still
he's like,
married
well, who's
him?
calling home? And no one. And I was just. It was before cell phones. I was just sitting at Olive Garden. I was like in tears. Like, how do you forget the bride?
Oh, my God. I can't believe you still married him. By the way, were there at least unlimited breadsticks to keep you occupied?
Well, yeah.
Okay, because they're so good. I take the breadsticks
it was just
dip them in the bottom of the salad, get all the oil and vinegar from the salad dressing. Just soak it. I would have been like, all right. I'd be like, joke's on you. You're going to come back to a bride filled with breadsticks. I hope you enjoy rolling me down the aisle, buddy. Okay, because now I'm stress eating because you left me here.
Right. Oh, it was something. Yeah.
I can't believe you married him.
And I'd forgotten that fact until my cousin brought it up a couple of years ago.
Oh, you blocked it out?
I think I buried that.
Naturally.
I blocked it.
Yeah. Why? Now, do you hold that over your husband's head from time to time?
A little bit, sometimes.
I would. Yeah. You should probably do more of that.
Oh, it's just like I could go on and on. Like, it's just.
I'm shocked.
It was. So when my.
First of all.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Why do we cheap out? I love the Olive Garden, but just for the purpose of this conversation, and I know you get my humor, why did he cheap out? $25,000 and we're at the Olive Garden? Why is this where we're cutting corners?
Oh, that was his parents.
Oh, okay. So his parents got a little
They
control?
chose it. They chose it, but how do I say it? I don't think anyone will be listening to this that know them.
No, nobody's listening at all.
They have a lot of money. And there's a reason why they have a lot of money.
Oh, they're cheap. They're penny pinchers. I got it. You don't have to say a word. I got you.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of wealthy people make their money.
But I think also because I'd worked at Olive Garden, and I think they knew I liked it, so I think they went there because they thought I liked it.
Maybe they left you there because they thought you had a work shift after the dinner. Did you ever think about that?
No.
Maybe somebody thought you were on the schedule, so they said just leave her. Now, were you in a wedding? You weren't in a wedding dress, right?
What?
You weren't in a wedding dress, obviously.
I wasn't in a wedding dress.
Yeah, okay.
No, I wasn't in a wedding dress.
So there was like a sad
dinner,
bride photo when they came back.
I just think I was really quiet back then, which is, hard to believe now, but I was very quiet back then, and I just figured someone would wait. And now I make sure I have a ride, but back then I just assumed someone would remember me.
Was this the same Olive Garden you actually worked at?
Yes, it was.
Oh my, how embarrassing for you. Yeah. So all your coworkers were like, oh my God, she doesn't just work here, but she's an abandoned bride?
Yes.
Now what? So when you went back, when did you go to work? The next day? Or how? Did you have off?
Well, no, because I had worked there a couple of years ago. So I wasn't working there at the time, but I knew a lot of people that worked there.
Oh my God. So they were probably like, this poor girl, she used to work here and now she's being abandoned here?
Yes.
No wonder you blocked it. Colleen, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to relive the trauma, but obviously you blocked it out. This says a lot.
It's funny.
This is gold.
I could turn my life into a number of movies.
No, that's hilarious. Like that's hilarious. Okay. That's like Home Alone level, because that's what happened. You're like Kevin McAllister in Home Alone. Everybody thought they had Kevin. You're Colleen McAllister. That's it.
Oh, great. Now I have a new nickname.
You're Colleen McAllister. Let it be written. You're in a church. Let it be written. You're Colleen McAllister. Wow.
Well, the funny thing is, my kids, when they hear this, they're like, why didn't you just call someone? I'm like, we didn't have cell phones accessible back then. Like, they had one.
You couldn't have asked an old coworker?
Well, I was too distraught to think about that.
Oh, my Lord. So you just shut down. Were you in the lobby?
Yeah.
So, like, people are waiting to be seated, and you're just in the lobby, like, having a meltdown?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. Are you crying? I don't know if those are tears or laughter. It might be both.
I'm laughing about it now. I mean, I kind of understand how it happened because, Jerry, he was going back to his house. I was going back to my mom's house. So he thought my parents were going to take me. My parents thought my cousin was going to take me because my cousin is also an only child. We have brought up very much like siblings.
Wow.
So I think everyone just thought everyone else had me. And I'd gone into the bathroom, and when no one saw me, they all thought someone took me.
This is why you need a bathroom buddy. Always have a bathroom buddy. So wait,
see, I'm not that type of woman. I don't need to go to the bathroom with another woman. So I think that's my problem.
I'm not that type of woman either. Okay, so listen, how did you get rescued? What happened?
My cousin realized that I wasn't at home when he got there.
Oh,
and
smart guy.
Kept asking around, and he came back and got me.
There was no communique?
Did we leave her there?
Wait a second. So you didn't even try. Yeah. So you didn't establish contact with anyone. You just sat there. You went into full-on shutdown mode, okay, and just sat there waiting for the universe to find you. And then they're at home, and somebody's like, "Hey, Colleen."
Yes.
And then they're like, "Where do we leave Colleen?" And then they're checking that she's not in my back pocket. And then just go back to the Olive Garden. Maybe she's still at the Olive Garden.
Yes.
What is wrong with your family, Colleen?
This is my life.
You need to listen. Yeah. I'm sure tonight over dinner you're going to be like, Jerry, listen, the trauma wound has been reopened, and I got some beef with you.
But see, I don't have a problem with Jerry. Do you know why? Because I knew I wasn't going home with him. He knew I wasn't going home with him because he was going back to his house. Like, you have to remember, we had a priest in the family, so we couldn't, we didn't live together. We weren't, he was going back to his house. So there's no reason why he would have taken me home when my parents and my cousin and my maid of honor, all these people were there.
I would still want to know where my bride-to-be is. I'd be concerned.
He assumed I was going home with my parents, probably.
Oh, Lord.
My parents thought, they just left. They thought I was going with someone else. So.
And then you.
It was an innocent mistake, but I just,
and you just sat there. You just sat there. Like you didn't pick up a phone and try to establish contact. You just said, you know what? if this is where I'm spending the rest of my life, at least I used to work here.
Hey, it had the breadsticks and salad to deal with,
Delicious.
so it's fine. They're a lot of food.
They used to be very delicious. Really?
Yeah,
and the
I know.
onions,
Yeah.
the very thin circular onions with the just thin enough that you get a crunch off of them, but also thin enough that they soaked up all of the salad dressing. The little crouton. Don't get me. I told you to stop talking about food. Oh my Lord, Colleen, I can't believe you were abandoned. Oh my God.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that.
Well, you know.
Maybe
that's why I have a hard time coming to the parks by myself.
Yeah, I can see that. In the age of cell phones, that would have never happened.
No, it wouldn't now.
No, the cell phone would have got left behind instead. Right. And let me tell you something. There would have been more panic over that cell phone being missing than you being missing.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, Colleen, for being such a fantastic caller, I'm going to send you an air tag.
Yeah.
And what you want to do is pair that to your husband's phone for future incidents, and that's going to allow him to track you in real time, all right? So for being a valued caller today, you have won an air tag, an Apple air tag. Thank you to Apple for providing that air tag.
Okay.
I'll talk to you later. Thank you, Colleen. Oh, my gosh. I cannot even believe that. I cannot believe it. 253-263-1540. We're live on Instagram. We're live on YouTube. Thank you for contributing to the gift goal on TikTok. That's going to show your support for what we're doing. We're going to do a team lift when we cut the radio presentation over on TikTok. So get ready for that. 253-263-1540. How does that happen? I had no idea she was going to tell that story. That was gold. Now, I have some stuff planned for tomorrow and Wednesday. We're going to play some clips. You know, as this format evolves, you know, what I'm trying to do is keep the bulk of the Disney content sort of in the front. Granted, callers can call in and steer the conversation wherever they want. But in a perfect world, you know, we'll take care of the Disney stuff. That'll be the front of the show, and at some point we'll find our way sort of into the news and the current events of it, right? And I think there's always Disney news. There's more Disney news out there than I think I even realized prior to putting this together. But there's always something going on, okay? And again, you can call in anytime you want and steer the conversation back to an earlier topic. I don't mind at all. 253-263-1540. So in just leaving the Disney world and going into the world of news and current events, I have to bring this up for only for the reason that I find it interesting. Purely, that's it. But if you saw this picture of Jay Leno, you know, Jay Leno, half of his face was severely bruised, and in typical internet fashion, the picture goes out and people start to speculate that, you know, Jay Leno, this, that, and the other. Oh, who's he owe a mob debt to? But anyway, Jay Leno fell down a hill and, like, severely bruised half of his face. I mean, really, 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 really bad. Why am I bringing this up? Thankfully, he's okay. The reason I'm bringing it up is because Jay Leno, whether you liked him as an entertainer, whether you liked him as a Tonight Show host, I personally didn't really think he was a solid Tonight Show host. If you know anything about your Tonight Show lore and the Johnny Carson and the Helen Kushnick story and all of that, then you can form opinions based off of that. But if you put all of that off to the side, this man's work ethic is so impressive. So I worked on the Tonight Show as an NBC Universal page. And a lot of guys that worked on Johnny's show worked on Jay's show. Jay Leno banked all of his Tonight Show money and only spent his stand-up comedy money. The idea that this man, after retiring from the Tonight Show and making money in all these other shows and whatnot that he's done, is still out there hitting the comedy circuit when he doesn't need to work at all, speaks volumes to this man's work ethic. Volumes to his work ethic. There is really I don't know of anybody in the entertainment business that is so devoted to their craft and also such a nice guy. And I'm the first one to tell you if somebody is or isn't. And I grew up listening to Howard Stern, so you would get conditioned to think that Jay was a jerk. And maybe in business, everybody's a jerk. But I saw firsthand, and anyone in LA will tell you and whatever, but just a nice, down-to-earth guy. But so impressive that after all this time, the man is still out there working. So I'm glad he's okay. But the guy's performing at a comedy club. He's staying at a Hampton Inn. He doesn't need to work. He doesn't need to work. You can't teach that level of work ethic. And all I want to say is to prove a point about this man, because I worked on The Tonight Show as a page, and I would talk to the guys that worked on Carson's Tonight Show. Jay Leno gave his crew bonuses every year for Christmas. I don't remember the exact amount, and I don't want to get the dollar amount wrong, but it was a lot of money. I mean, it was a lot of money. We're not talking about $500. I think it was like $10,000 or something for every year they were with the show. I don't remember the exact dollar amount. I don't want to get it wrong. So every Christmas, Jay Leno would give his crew members a bonus for every year they were with the show. And if they came over from Johnny Carson's show, he counted those years too. I'm going to say it again. Jay Leno gave every crew member a bonus for every year they were with the show every Christmas out of his pocket, and he counted the Carson years for every crew member that was on his show. That's a good guy. Now, you may not like him from an entertainment perspective, but that's a good guy. And so I'm glad he's okay. I was blown away when I saw it. And then I'm like, why is Jay Leno working? I don't think the guy knows how to not work. I don't think he knows how to not work. I think he's just one of these people that if he stops working, you know, what do you do with yourself? So I had the opportunity to meet the guy. I didn't go meet the guy. Stuttering John Melendez wanted me to go with him to meet him. I'm like, I do not want to be tied to you in Jay Leno's eyes. So I did not go. I was like, if I ever have the opportunity to meet Jay one day, great. But I do not forever want to be attached to you when I meet Jay. So I did not go. 253-263-1540. For those that don't know, we're talking about the NBC Page program. So I graduated college in 2003. I moved to Manhattan. I lived in Hell's Kitchen briefly. And then I moved to Los Angeles, to the San Fernando Valley. My first apartment was in Sherman Oaks, about 4 miles away from Universal-ish. And over time, I made my way to Studio City and whatnot. But I basically lived in the Valley for more times than not in my 2 decades in L.A. I started on the Burbank lot where Johnny Carson did his show, where Jay Leno was doing his Tonight Show. When I started there, it was NBC. There was the NBC Universal merger, which a lot of that was predicated off of the Dick Wolf catalog, the Law and Order shows. So NBC buys Universal, even though Universal in theory was bigger. I don't know if it was actually bigger in terms of value, but, you know, physically. And we were going to move over to the Universal lot. And it was a big deal. NBC was buying Universal. NBC's buying Universal. This is huge. I worked for the TV studio at the time, which was NBC Universal Television Studios. Or Nuts. We called ourselves Nuts because it was fitting. Nuts became UMS. Universal Media Studios. Nuts became UMS. I think at some point it was UTV. I don't even know. But what I'm getting at is, back in the day, NBC Studios only produced content for NBC. And as NBC started to evolve and take over the Universal side of things, and I worked here, so I know these things firsthand, NBC Studios started to produce content for companies outside of their own entity. The first being the show House. House was on Fox but produced by NBC because the network passed on it. They produced it for Fox. I believe the network passed on it. So, NBC Universal Television starts producing for other networks. It's now got cable production under its umbrella. It's producing for cable, and it's getting massive. It's huge. It's huge. And if you remember, there used to be a conversation about a la carting cable. The idea was we're going to a la carte cable for the consumer because the consumer is paying too much money because bundles are gouging the consumer. And it never happened. In fact, the streaming landscape is quite the bookend to that conversation because in many ways we've come full circle. But what I'm getting at is the cable assets became such a massive part of the company. One day they announced the creation of Hulu. That was the answer to Netflix. Netflix was building up its catalog by giving a ton of money to Hollywood studios at a time where they couldn't find revenue in other areas. So Netflix was lining the studios' pockets, building up the Netflix platform. Essentially, the studios were funding the enemy, even though they were taking money from the enemy, but they were allowing the enemy to use their content to build their platform. If you remember the early days of Netflix, you had lots of shows on there that got taken off because they belonged to other studios and they wanted them on their streamer. So Hulu was the beginning of that conversation, and Hulu became a joint venture between multiple studios as the answer to Netflix. NBC had this massive cable entity. Comcast comes into the equation and buys NBC Universal, so it becomes Comcast NBC Universal, which means all the properties that Comcast had at Comcast Studios, which sat on Wilshire, which was like G4 and E, all of this stuff gets folded in to the NBC Universal cable catalog. USA, Sci-Fi, E, Bravo, all of these channels, MSNBC, CNBC. Cable was booming. They started to split the studio up. And I'm not going to say his name. I just almost came off my tongue because, again, I lived there. I saw this happen. I worked there. And then the cable production got its own entity, which I never understood at the time. Why are you splitting this up? Why are you splitting up production? We're all under one roof. Why are you doing this over there? It doesn't make sense. Oh, we're going to let cable focus on cable, and then the studios kind of get back to its roots, get back to brass tacks. I think it was a panic-based decision because last week, NBC Universal announced the formation of something which is temporarily being called SpinCo. SpinCo is a company where all of those cable channels are being spun off into its own entity. See, I think for the longest time, NBC Universal was trying to find a way to pull all of its cable assets off to the side into a silo. And while they didn't necessarily take them out of the company by carving out production, they were certainly trying to separate them. And I don't know what the end goal was there, but at the time, cable was very, very valuable. Enter the streaming race post Hulu, right? Disney Plus, HBO Max, Peacock. So now what you have happening, and I'll bring this back to Disney in a moment for you, now what you have happening is they're carving out all the cable properties, with the exception of Bravo, into a SpinCo, a separately traded entity. So we've gone from hyper-consolidation, hyper-media consolidation, to divesting assets. So now all of these cable channels, with the exception of Bravo, are going to be put out into SpinCo. And what's going to happen is SpinCo is probably going to build itself up in terms of licensing a lot of those cable properties back to NBC or to somebody else, because now they can be competitive with those things, okay, and they can seek somebody else. Maybe they'll take the soft NBC Universal Comcast money. Maybe not. Maybe they go to a Netflix and try to get more money. But now they're going to build up this SpinCo, okay, because its value is the content catalog. And SpinCo will probably get gobbled up by a tech company. If I had to guess, you're looking at Netflix or Apple. I don't think Amazon really cares, right? Content for Amazon is just It's just a means to an end. Disney is going to wind up following this playbook at some point, and I would imagine this probably won't happen until the next CEO comes in. If I had to guess, and I'm purely making a guess, that the next CEO will be afforded the opportunity to make this one of his first big moves, which will be to spin off, like I said earlier in the show, to spin off these cable properties, hack them up and sell them off, right? Create a lighter company. Create a lighter company, lower the cost of operations, right? And now, if you do this right, not only do you get to pump up and plump up the valuation of this new entity, okay, with all of this content that it owns, all this content that it controls by licensing out to other streamers. But once you remove it from the company, you make the company slimmer. And like I said earlier, I think in respect to Disney and actually NBC Universal, Comcast NBC Universal, that's the beginning of an acquisition again, right? So you have hyper consolidation, then things divest, and then they consolidate again. The difference being, instead of media companies gobbling up media companies, you're going to see tech companies gobbling up these legacy media companies. I believe Apple will wind up buying Disney, a lighter Disney, under the new CEO. And I think NBC Universal, a lighter version of NBC Universal, gets gobbled up by Warner Brothers Discovery. Okay, you can say, well, Warner Brothers Discovery is not a tech company, but that might not be the end of that deal. And I think at some point that will then get gobbled up by an Apple. You know, Apple's dying to own content. They don't have it. The tech companies are going to gobble up everything. There aren't that many studios left. But what I'm seeing, and we're going to go to the phones, and I'm sorry I missed your call, but what I'm seeing happening right now with what NBC Universal has set up, okay, is the beginning of that trend. Now, if you remember, at one point, companies like Viacom and CBS were separate entities, right? CBS was the network. Viacom represented the cable assets, MTV and VH1 and Nickelodeon and all of this. And then they consolidated, and then they separated. And I don't even know where they are anymore. I think they're consolidated back again. You know, but these are the trends that happen in the entertainment industry, expand and contract. And I think what you're seeing with this NBC Universal spinoff is the next round of mergers and acquisitions for these studios. And those are going to be partnered up with tech companies. All right. 253-263-1540. I actually am looking forward. I want to talk to Richard. I don't know if he's out there listening. I used to work with Richard at NBC Universal, good friend of mine, former boss. But he came from the USA side. He saw the NBC Universal merger. He saw Comcast come in. And I'd be curious to get somebody like that's perspective. You know, the media landscape continues to evolve. We used to have a term called new media, alternative media. And I think we're actually just back to the point where it's just media, right? It's content. Everything's been called content now. The term media isn't even really applied. Content became the word. So a movie is considered content. A TikTok video is considered content. A song is content. A picture is content, right? Content is king. And I think when you take these cable assets and you spin them off, what you do is you create bigger value, right? Because now, if I'm Netflix and I can gobble up a SpinCo or something of the like, that's going to create huge value for my catalog. Because now I don't have to battle with future licensing fees. I don't have to battle with paying for that. If I can gobble up what another company perceives to be their trash, okay, they'll do it. Netflix has got such deep pockets. Netflix doesn't even have to spend their own money. The people will line up to give them more money. Same thing with Amazon. These companies, banks line up to give these tech companies more money. Okay, when Amazon acquired Whole Foods, they got bonds. They didn't need anything. I think they could have paid for it in cash. But when people line up to invest, why wouldn't you take their money? The whole name of the game is OPM, other people's money. So what you're seeing, I think, with this divesting of the cable assets, I think you're going to see it mirrored with Disney, but I predict that it'll be with the new CEO. And I think what you're going to see is they're going to take the Fox channels that they don't need. They're going to probably take a couple of the things from the Disney side that they no longer see value in. We've seen rebrands over the years of things like the Family Channel, things like that. So it's not unheard of. Okay, but there's no reason to be holding all the cable channels, and there's certainly no reason to be holding all of these programs and all of these content catalogs if you're not going to utilize them. Which goes back to what I'm saying about the Muppets. If you're not going to utilize them effectively, sell them off. You're already paring down the company, Bob. You're already watering down the company and paring it for an acquisition. It's obvious. Anybody with half a brain can see that that's what's going on with all of these media companies. Otherwise, they can't survive. You can't beat Amazon and Netflix and Apple. You just can't. There's no way that Comcast, NBC Universal can beat those guys in the long run. There's no way that Disney can beat those guys in the long run. That is why when it's all said and done, the Disney-Apple merger is inevitable. And if you know your Pixar history, like I talked about earlier on the show, then you know in many ways it's corporate synergy at its finest because there's connective tissue between the organizations. So I don't know. There would have been a time a couple years ago where I would have said I don't want that to happen. But the way current leadership at the Walt Disney Company is functioning, I don't know how much worse it could get. 253-263-1540. We're going to go a little bit longer here. Then we'll wrap it up. We'll podcast it out. Yesterday's podcast with Kenzie is up wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm going to do another ad break, and then we're going to wind down the show. We'll take a few more calls, and then we'll do a team lift on TikTok. Thank you for contributing to the gift goal over there. Oh, speaking of Colleen, ready to spice up your kitchen this holiday season? Pampered Chef has all the goodies from spatulas and mandolins to amazing pots, pans, and knives. Plus, don't miss out on small appliances like the deluxe air fryer and coffee maker to make your holiday cooking a breeze. Reach out to Colleen Herman, pamperedchef.com/PWS/Colleen Herman. pamperedchef.com/PWS/Colleen Herman. On vacation and the unthinkable happens. Have you been injured in an accident? Don't wait to get the help you deserve when you need it the most. At the law offices of Nicole M. Kennedy, they fight for your rights and work tirelessly to get you the compensation you deserve. Call now 305-213-5438 for a free consultation. You don't pay unless they win. Focus on the healing and let them handle the rest. The law office of Nicole M. Kennedy, 305-213-5438. Last minute shipping from the parks. Did you buy that lightsaber from Galaxy's Edge? Now you don't know how you're going to get it on the airplane. Talk to my friends at the UPS store located at 6526 Old Brick Road, right behind the Magic Kingdom. The UPS store at 6526 Old Brick Road. And if you're local, they've got a notary as well. You can find the complete address on my Instagram. Tell them Joe Coconut sent you. And as always, you can book your travel through William.bailey using the form on my website or reach out to him at William.bailey at academytravel.com for all of your destination planning, cruises, Disney cruises, theme park adventures, or just traveling the world. William Bailey is there to help you customize an affordable travel experience. William.bailey at academytravel.com. And I just made up 80% of that ad off the top of my head. Sounded pretty good. Sometimes we are so worried about this life and this moment we forget to plan for the life we leave those behind. With no estate plan, you could be leaving those you love the most with high taxes, probate fees, and an incomplete or divided estate. Legal fees and a fight. A will or trust is not just for the Rockefellers anymore. If you live in Florida, contact RK Law today to make an appointment. Don't leave those loved ones behind with legal fees and legal fights. Contact RK Law today to make an appointment and safeguard the future of those you love. Send an email to russell@rklawpro.com. Send an email to russell@rklawpro.com. Those are the ads. As always, you can show your support for us by knocking out that gift goal on TikTok or visit my website, royces.com, and purchase your own Joe Coconut, who's right there next to me. And those are the ways you can support the channel. Thank you to our sponsors. We have 5 sponsors on the show for the rest of the year. I'm very happy to say that in just a short period of time, we have built this podcast up into a new revenue stream, which speaks volumes to you all out there. 253-263-1540. We're going to start to wind it down here. It is about 11:20 in the morning. We're about 3 hours into the show. 253-263-1540. I'm still laughing that Colleen got left at the Olive Garden at her wedding rehearsal dinner. I can't believe that. That's the same Colleen, by the way, pampered chef. But I can't believe that. Like, how does that? I mean, nobody notices you. I mean, in the car ride, nobody was like, I'm responsible for the bride. Okay. I told Nick to call in, and I don't know if Nick's going to call in tomorrow or not, but I want to go further on the Bitcoin conversation with you all. I think a lot of people have no idea, and because they have no idea, that it just becomes sort of like a wall. I know it was for me for the longest time, and it's not too late. And I would love to have that conversation. You got to be careful like everything else out there. But I really do want to have more of that conversation. I have some other things I want to talk about tomorrow on the show. We're going to play some clips and talk about some issues. You know, we're here to talk about Disney, but we're really here to talk about anything and everything. One of the most important parts of this platform is long-form conversation for me. And having you call in if there's an issue in your community, if there's an issue that is important to you that you just want to speak to and you just want to highlight, I want to start to use this platform as a vessel for those conversations. It's really important to me that we pull discourse to the middle. You'll hear a lot of reoccurring themes on this show. One of them is moderation. One of them is everything is a scam. But it's important to me that as we talk about influence and we talk, whether we're talking about the power at Disney or we're talking about, you know, a crypto wallet and all these different things, you know, the power of conversation and the power of understanding and the ability to keep educating ourselves. These are very, very important, and they're lost, right? The same way we talk about inspiring the next generation. You know, we have to start having these conversations with each other. And my fear post-election is that people are so walled off and so unwilling to conversate on things that they may not agree on that you're not going to see progress. If everybody stays inside of a vacuum, if everybody is in their own bubble, in an echo chamber, and all you're ever hearing, okay, is the feedback that you want to hear, then where do you get progress from? You know, one of the things that always has and will always fascinate me about Walt Disney was that he never settled. You know, it would have been so easy for Walt Disney to say, well, I made Snow White. It's a success. I'll just make a sequel. Or it would have been so easy for him to say, well, I built Disneyland. It was a success. Let me make another one. No. What did he do? He went the opposite way. Every time he conquered something, he was like, let me go to uncharted territory and let me break new ground. Let me dare to be different. I'm not going to rest on my laurels. Just because I've done something and succeeded at it doesn't mean I'm going to do it again. Been there, done that, moving on. And that is the entrepreneurial spirit. And they don't teach that. I've had 3.5 years of success streaming the parks. This is the beginning of that next chapter. When you talk about, we're talking about Jim Henson earlier. When you talk about the first 10 years before the guy even gets to Sesame Street, when you look at, and this is the stuff, we talk about business and influence that fascinates me. When you look at a company like Lego, the first 10 years before they ever got the plastic bricks, right? So I'm 3.5, 4 years into whatever it is we're building. The way I look at it when I look at these stories, because I compare to those things, and that is how I think that we're supposed to learn, is to study other people's stories. You don't have to do exactly what they did, but if you're truly inspired by somebody, then you try to take a page out of their playbook, right? That's what you would do. So I look at these other success stories and I go, all right, well, 10 years. I'm at the 4-year mark. I got 6 more years of whatever I'm building before I actually get to the definitive moment. Now, maybe I've counted my years off, and maybe those years started before the live streaming of the park. But I look at all of the success stories that inspire me personally, and you look at those formative years, and you realize how much opportunity there was to give up or to be complacent. Being complacent and giving up, I don't know which one's worse. Complacency, all right, giving up would be me saying, I quit, I'm not streaming the parks anymore. Complacency would be, hey, I'm just going to keep streaming the parks and answering the same 3 questions for the rest of my life and not move the needle. Keep my head down, take the money, and run. But I'm inspired by the people that were always looking to create friction, to create progress. And you don't do that without disrupting things. So for those that keep asking, no more parks, or why aren't you in the parks like you used to be, or what is your park schedule? This is me disrupting things. This is me not being complacent. This is me not quitting. This is growth. To me, that's the value of what we're doing. Write this number down because it's the same every show, 253-263-1540, 253-263-1540. And I just wish, I understand that these companies need to make money, but I just wish there was a little respect for legacy. I wish somebody would think about legacy. I am super bummed that they're taking out Muppet Vision 3D. But I'm more disappointed that, not surprised, but I'm more disappointed that they didn't announce a plan for it. I read that quote from the family, from the Henson family. It is obvious that they read about it the same way we did. And I just think if we're talking about what makes this country so unique, you can't say great, because then you'll piss off half of the population. But what makes this country so unique, okay, is the fact that the American dream is real. And you can literally, in today's day and age, be in your house, in your bedroom, in front of the computer, and make yourself wealthy. Whether you're 3D printing a gadget and selling it to everybody on Etsy, or whether you're a kid who created a cryptocurrency while he was live on TikTok. You can literally find wealth from your bedroom in this world that we live in. If you know anything about Thomas L. Friedman, he wrote The World is Flat, and it is. And I'm not a flat earther, chill out. What I'm saying is, from a communications perspective or a communicative perspective, it's flattened, right? So now, me here in Florida, I've got the opportunity to sell something to somebody in Bangladesh because of the connectivity of the internet. So I made that joke earlier about the internet and blaming the internet, but the flip side to all of the negative discourse that the internet has brought us, and the negative effects of the spread of information going too fast, the flip side to all of that is that you have the ability to market to the world because it's flat now. And it's been flat for quite some time. But everybody, look, this is what I'm talking about putting, and I'm wrapping it up, but this is what I'm talking about putting your money to work for you. Think about this for a second. You can sit at home, okay, and even with a 9-to-5 job, you could start to build a business. Whether it's a 3D printer or a silhouette or a Cricut, maybe it's a sticker business. Maybe you're 3D printing accessories for something, or maybe you're doing an Amazon affiliate thing and drop ship stuff. That drop shipping was a trend for a minute. What I'm saying is there's all these tools out there. Maybe you're just day trading stocks. Maybe you're just investing in crypto. But there's all these tools out there that we could be using for ourselves to free up a little bit of our time or a little bit of our money or maybe a little bit of both. So having these conversations, that's the value. That's the value. And maybe what we'll get to the point on here at some point, we'll actually show you how to buy crypto. Like I told you, I didn't own crypto a couple weeks ago. I bought Doge first because as much as I can't stand Elon Musk, I'm like, if I can make some money off of his bizarreness, I'm going to. It is what it is, folks. It is, the opportunity is endless. And look, I'm going to say this one last time. I know people tune in and I'm not in the park and they want me to be in the park. But this is so much more important. Having these conversations, and we have difficult conversations here too. It's not always going to be, outrage over a theme park attraction. The opportunity to have real valuable conversation. That's what I'm thankful for. That's what I'm thankful for this Thanksgiving, is that I'm able to have recovered from this pandemic, found my way through the app and through Disney to rebuild. Like I told you, the Disney side of things saved me. So I'm fortunate enough and thankful that I've got the ability to do what we're doing here and that I could take the bull by the horns and steer this ship in a different direction. It'd be much easier to quit. It'd be even easier to just do the same old thing and be complacent. So thank you for your understanding. Thank you for your support. Thank you. And happy Thanksgiving. I'll see you next time.